Let my heart and my soul, you see that I ran. Rings of gold and awards sit on my nightstand. I've got something they want, but it's mine again. Free my struggles, detach me from this island. Leave my knuckles, attack me for my finance. I'm dealing with this pain, I just can't let you come throw it away. So I run. Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up. So I run. Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up.
Taking off quick too fast, I'ma tippy toes on the feet about no else still. Taking off quick too fast, I'ma tippy toes on the feet about no else still. 6-0 run around town, profile mentality. Bad on 10-6 racing under me. D-do acting like we ain't what I wanna be. Got me tickled trying to act so selfishly. Pocket full of green stacked up like a pot of peas. Big boy dog walk around with a lot of fleas. So I'm quick, go super fast. Every day I gotta make it count. Every second gotta make it last. Roll around, do the double dash. Big flow on my skin. Taking off the 10. 9, go, 8. Hold up, wait, got a date. Ladies love my speed. Quick to run up trees. Who you sing like me? Nobody. Stand in my lane. Best friend named Tails. Balance running on rails. I can never fail.
Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up. So I run. Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up. Hey, speed me up. Hey, speed me up. Don't turn down the bass. Someone tell the DJ, leave me up. They was sleeping on me, now they see me up. Beat me up. Rings on me like LeBron. Rings on me like 23. Blue 911, nigga speed fast. He was talking down, I level up on this. Tell her, baby, I'ma hit her up, cause she bad. Money in my phone and now I'm running to the cash, yeah. Marathon, just like Nipsey the Great. Spin dash to the safe, do the dash like take it. I'm dealing with this pain, I just can't let you come throw it away.
Don't crash, really go fast. Press on the gas, 400 my dash, never gonna last. Came a long way from the back of my dash. Since I got racks, I never look back. I'm going fast, I'm on way to the bank. Level up, I'm moving up on my rank. Pedal to metal, I'm winning a race. Yeah.
Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up. So I run. Keep me up, creep on me, they speak on me, they slow down when they bring me up like speed me up. Check it, detach.
Hey, welcome into the H-Town Huddle. I am your host, the Neon Peacock, aka Miles Peacock. I'm bringing you the fresh, daily, almost, it feels like, Houston Texans content, because they just slam in your newsfeed with all the stuff Houston Texans isms. We got the five-headed monster that is CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Dalton Schultz. I mean, that's a six-headed monster if you're really counting. So super excited about the season. I got my boy Tank Dell's jersey on. You saw the Tank Dell promo video, recovering from his injury, looking up to speed, like he never left the field, like he never broke his fibula. Dude is a machine. So if you guys haven't noticed, you don't know, I'm all about the Tank Dell, pushing him a lot this season. If you went back and saw some of the stuff previously on the GWN network, he is my guy there in that realm. So I've been pushing him a lot. And last year, if you guys were hanging around, I was saying, hey, look, be on the lookout for the 2024 Texans. Well, guess what? it's the 2024 season. The Texans are here. They actually arrived a whole season earlier in 2023, and they made some noise going 10-6. You guys know that whole story about that. Completely trouncing the Browns in a 45-16 playoff victory in the wild card round, and then ultimately ending their season the way that they began, with a loss to the Ravens. They did play that game 10-10 up to halftime, and it was just too much talent on the Ravens side of the football for the Texans to move on. This season, however, they've added a lot of talent to both sides of the football, and they look to compete with the likes of the Ravens and the Chiefs. So appreciate everybody for showing up and showing out here for the H-Town Huddle, the inaugural first episode of H-Town Huddle. Today is going to be kind of quick. We're just going to run it down, maybe stick around for about an hour or so, give you guys just, a tidbit. It's my turn. I'm actually drafting in another league, so just bear with me right now. Aaron Rodgers was just taken. It's a 2-quarterback league. I'm looking at Isaiah Pacheco, Derrick Henry, Kyron Williams. Let's see what kind of receivers are left. Nico. Oh, man. I'm going to go ahead and just grab the Nico stack here because I already have CJ Stroud in the first round. It's a 14-man team. Came back around at the 2-4, picked up Jordan Love, and I'm just going to go ahead and pair it with Nico Collins right there. Great, great pick for me. It's easy. They're just giving me all my Texans guys over here in this 14 team battle of the brands on the 420 network. So representing for the GWN network and the H-Town Huddle, made my pick, and I will be back in 6 picks. But back to what we're doing over here. Wanted to give a shout out to everybody who's up in the chat. Shout out to Lee, our ear to the streets, everybody at the GMM network. Heck yeah, Tank for president, man. And you guys know I've been pushing Tank a lot. So, he's obviously the last Texans wide receiver drafted, and I think the one who has the most upside to really blow the top off of defenses and give you something to worry about. So more on that, and I'll break it down with some nice, cool stats for y'all. So shout out to Spencer the Guru and everybody else in the channel. Derek, much love. Really appreciate it. Steamboat, Candlestick, you guys rock. Appreciate you guys tuning in. So let's get back into it. Let's break it down. Week 1. Steadily approaching. We're here. We got football tomorrow, folks. Chiefs versus Ravens kicking off the regular season. Can't believe it's here. It's been a minute. It's been a long time coming, but we're extremely happy, really excited to get that going. But the Texans do face the Colts in week 1. It should be, just another one of those matchups that typically is every single time the Colts and the Texans face off. It's exciting football. They're divisional rivals. They know each other very well. And this year will be nothing different. The Texans did face Anthony Richardson last year in the second game of the season, and we got to see him relatively quickly. I think he had like 18 snaps, and he was still able to chew off 2 rushing touchdowns versus the Texans before he left that game with a concussion. So durability is going to be the issue again for Mr. Anthony Richardson, AR5, as they call him now, no longer AR15. Shout out to Kidda for bringing that one up. But Anthony Richardson, he's obviously still a threat to move the football with his legs. He doesn't have to be necessarily a great passer in order to win football games. Now, for fantasy purposes, he's explosive with his legs, and if he can get it done there, then that's all you really need. He can break fantasy. But if you play in leagues that penalize for incompletions, and it's my turn again on this pick. Bear with me, folks. Mike Evans still there. DK Metcalf still there. I could go running back here. Isaiah Pacheco still on the board, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just grab Pacheco here. All right. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so plenty of time before my next pick. I can get back to the nitty-gritty here. So we were talking about Anthony Richardson last year. He did appear in only 4 games for the Colts in 2023. A bit of a bummer for those of you who spent the capital and drafted him early. Like I said, he was exciting when he was healthy. Wasn't healthy much of the season. You're talking 4 games. He was knocked out of one of them early, like I mentioned, versus the Texans with a concussion. And then I think 2 weeks later, he was knocked out for the season with the AC shoulder joint injury. So, the health is going to be the question for AR this season. Like I said, if you took a shot on him, I do hope that you a couple of rounds later got a security blanket, type of pocket presence QB who doesn't necessarily have a long injury history, who could probably prop up your team for you in the event that Rich does go down. But we did see a little bit of Anthony Richardson in the preseason. It was a bit of a mixed bag. First drive, I believe he was like 7 of 8, drove the ball all the way downfield. No throw I saw go more than about 15 yards down the field. So maybe just kind of reeling him in nice and slow, easing him into that offense, getting a feel for it. A lot of stuff to A.D. Mitchell underneath or at the line of scrimmage. Some behind the line of scrimmage screens. A couple of shots, like I said, were a little further down the field to the tight end, maybe about 10 yards or so. But after that initial drive, after the touchdown to A.D. Mitchell streaking across underneath the field versus, I might add, the Cincinnati Bengals second or third string. After that, it was all what we're kind of used to seeing, a mixed bag, inconsistent passing. He missed some wide open receivers, short, long, high, left a guy in the flat, kind of open and exposed for a hit. So it's a mixed bag is what you're going to see, aside from the pre-designed, pre-notion first drive that was probably, well rehearsed. He didn't look that great. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see versus the Texans. Now, we do know that the Texans have added or beefed up their defense entirely from last year. They did see some strides and improvement with Coach D'Amico Ryans taking over as the head coach, defensive-minded head coach. Went from one of the worst run-stopping defenses last year to top 10, barely sneaking into the top 10, mind you, while their pass defense still, lagged behind and was somewhere around 27th in the league. So that's why the Texans defense was allowing a lot of points, and you saw them in a lot of shootouts like the way they were with the Bucs and things of that nature last year. But yeah, that's a lot of thanks for the Kakov, Kidda, what's up? Solid pick. Yeah, of course, Pacheco is a solid guy. Shout out to Pacheco, the only Hispanic fantasy relevant player out there, I guess, other than some kickers and some backup QBs. But like I mentioned, fantasy relevant players. So shout out to IPOC, Isaiah Pacheco on that one. This is a Texans podcast, but I will be covering fantasy football questions. If you got them, throw them in the chat. And anything about the AFC South, I have a particular insight because I do watch a lot of those teams twice a year, and actually more times, when the Texans aren't on TV, I'm going to tune into an AFC South battle to see who the opponents are playing or how they're faring and how we'll look against them right in the coming weeks. So have some of that insight for you guys there as well. But we did talk about A-Rich a little bit. I did mention CJ Stroud. Let's go ahead and just turn the page over to the other side here. We're starting with quarterbacks. We'll break down some of the other positional areas and then take it from there, right? But CJ Stroud in 2023, 23 passing touchdowns, a lowly 5 interceptions. He did really good protecting the football. He was sacked a whole bunch of times. I believe in the first game versus the Colts, he was sacked 6 times. So, slow start for them. They didn't really let the reins loose on C.J. Stroud early in the season. It wasn't until maybe about week 4. I'm not mentioning the last meetup with the Colts at this point because there was no Anthony Richardson in that game. We saw Gardner Minshew do well enough to keep them relatively close and still have a shot to win that game. So it is what it is there. There's no longer a Gardner Minshew. Minshew the Ginsu is not in Indy anymore. I guess they saw how Joe Flacco did with the Browns and said, hey, we need a guy who can possibly, put some points up against a divisional opponent like that and still be a good vet. So they went ahead and snagged up Joe Flacco, and that is the backup for Anthony Richardson now. But CJ Stroud, like I mentioned, 23 TDs, 5 interceptions. I do expect those numbers to go up. They kind of held the reins for that first month, didn't let CJ cook really. And then this year, the emphasis is to be more aggressive with the football, take more shots down the field, which is another reason why I really like Tank Dell in this offense. But we'll get to that when we get to the receivers. But back to CJ, I think I do have a couple of notes as far as how CJ fared in his 2 games versus the Colts. Game 1, 384 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 103.5 passer rating versus the lowly Colts secondary, which has not seen much improvement. It's still bringing back the same defensive coordinator from last year. So I still expect them to be susceptible to the pass. Now, Texans, like we've mentioned, have added a new pass catcher into the group. So I think this fares well for CJ and company heading into Indy this coming weekend. Okay, just making sure I wasn't on the clock yet. Yeah, Pacheco. Okay, cool. 4 picks until it's my turn. So, and his second game versus the Colts, which is the last game that kind of pushed them into the playoffs, Stroud looked phenomenal, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, no interceptions in this game, 134.1 quarterback rating, which is damn near perfect. He opened up that game with a bomb 75-yard touchdown to Nico Collins over the top just to set the tone. So really good stuff from Stroud. I like I said, I'm expecting kind of the one and the same, more aggressiveness that we saw towards the end of last season right out of the gates this year. So the numbers should bump up for everybody a little bit if you want to just put into context the fact that that Stroud was a rookie last year, Dell was a rookie last year. The first 4 games was a feeling out process, and these guys didn't really know how good they were going to be up until they started playing with each other. They're playing alongside each other and getting stuff going. All right, it is my turn again in this sleeper draft. I'm on the clock with 40 seconds. David Montgomery is there. DK Metcalf is still there, screaming value. Who else is in the flex category as far as points? Raheem Mostert. I think I'm going to lean DK here. I'm just going to go ahead and snatch DK Metcalf at the 5'11" in a 14-teamer. So far I have Stroud, Love in the super flex here, Nico, Pacheco, and Metcalf. And a few more picks until it comes back to my turn. But back to CJ Stroud in 2023, phenomenal rookie season, rookie of the year. And let's just look at Stroud's numbers here for the year. CJ Stroud in 2023 was the AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, 499 attempts. Keep in mind he did miss 2 full games with a concussion. Well, almost 2 full games. He was knocked out in the first quarter of the Jets game. So a game in 3 quarters or so that he did miss this season. Like I said, a slow start didn't really let him cook up until week 4 or so. So 319 completions, that gives him a nearly 64% completion rating, 4,108 yards. And we mentioned the 23 TDs in the air and 5 interceptions. He also added 3 rushing touchdowns, which people don't really talk about. A little part of his game that was there that probably happened because, he dropped back to pass. Everybody's covered. Teams were in cover 1 or cover 0. He saw the backs of the defenders and decided, hey, I can run this in for 7 yards. He does have a little bit of wheels. People don't really realize that, I think. So it is what it is. Hey, shout out to Derek. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Derek, showing up and showing out. Got a few more picks before it's my turn here. 1, 2, 3 more picks until it's my turn. I'm going to go ahead and look at the queue. I'll talk it up with you guys, see what's going on. David Montgomery's still there. You only need to start 1 RB, 1 wide receiver, and everything else is flex. So I might as well just lump all these guys in together. Look at the points. Joe Mixon is still there, who we'll talk about as well. I think that he's going to have a really good year. But at this point, a lot of the running backs are kind of lumped up there at the top. Amari Cooper is still available. T. Higgins, Tank Dell, of course, but I already have Nico in this particular league. George Pickens and Zach Moss. So the running backs kind of drop off. I think I'll probably lean David Montgomery as DJ Moore and T. Higgins just go. 1 pick before me here. So it's either David Montgomery or James Cook for me in this particular situation. I'm leaning actually James Cook. So depending on what this person does here in this pick before me, I'll probably go James Cook, otherwise David Montgomery. My receivers are already Metcalf and Collins. Like I said, I'd rather have Tank Dell over Amari Cooper regardless in this situation. So I'm not going to split hairs there, and I'll take whoever is left between Montgomery or Cook, with Cook the slight edge, I guess, because of ADP. So we'll just put it that way. 17 seconds. I'm waiting for this person to pick, and then we can get back to the H-Town Huddle business, folks. So bear with me here. And just for review, this is a 14-teamer that I'm drafting in. I'm at pick 11. I took Stroud at 111. Love, Collins, Pacheco, Metcalf. This person probably thought I was going to take Mixon as well, because Mixon just went off, and I'm going to go ahead and select James Cook. All right. Back at it. Appreciate y'all for bearing with me while I went through that pick. Hey, what's good, Tino? What's good, my man? Appreciate you for showing up. Salute. So yeah, we are. I was just making a pick in the Battle of the Brands over there. I took James Cook after DK Metcalf. I'm kind of liking my team here, especially when it's 14 teams spread out. Kind of just give me best available at these positions. But I was going over CJ Stroud, his numbers from last year, offensive AP Rookie of the Year. And I do believe these numbers will go up with the addition of a run game, a solidified offensive line, Stephon Diggs, obviously, Dalton Schultz in year 2, Nico, everybody in year 2 really with CJ Stroud, with the addition of Tank Dell as well, making his second year jump with him. They came into the league together. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys on Sunday. I think that Stroud will eat. I did mention his numbers, and I'll go over them again. His 2 games versus the Colts. Game 1, where he didn't really open things up until the second half, 384 yards, 2 touchdowns, 103.5 rating. Second game, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, 134.1 rating. No interceptions in either of those games. That's a total of 648 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in the 2 games versus the Colts. So, the tide has turned. I remember the days when T.Y. Hilton was the Texans killer. I hated playing the Colts because there was, they had Andrew Luck, and then they just always had our number. So, now I feel the tables have kind of turned. We did lose that first matchup in week 2 versus the Colts last year, but early on in the season, some growing pains. Tank Dell wasn't even a starting receiver. He was like the wide receiver 4 or 5 at that point. It wasn't until the second half of that game when the Texans were trailing that they said, let's put our better players in there, and sat Robert Woods' ass down for a little bit or whatever it was. And we started to see some growth. And then the next week after that, week 3, was a coming out party versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, in which Tank Dell and company and CJ Stroud, they all took off, right? So, like I said, that first game kind of held in check because of the play calling, rookie quarterback. We don't know what to expect, blah, blah, blah. Kind of a rough week 1 versus the Ravens. So coming into that second game, didn't really know if they were going to be able to catch fire. They did in the second half, made it a closer game than it was on paper. It was kind of a blowout to a certain point there. But Stroud really came into his own, started to find that rhythm, and then never really looked back after this point in the year. And so I did bring up the fact that the Colts defense has not changed as far as the defensive coordinator and much of the secondary. Colts ran a zone coverage at the highest clip last year, the highest rate of the entire NFL. It was above 70%. And CJ Stroud and Tank Dell just ate up versus zone. So I'm expecting a Tank Dell type of game tomorrow. On Sunday. That's just my expectation. He's probably one of my higher ranked flexes. So, he's probably your wide receiver 3 in most cases. So stick him in that flex. He's a definite auto start for me. We'll get to Nico and Diggs as well in a bit. But if I'm saying Tank Dell at the flex at wide receiver 3 for the Texans is an automatic flex start, then if you have either Diggs or Nico in that other one, then you're starting them as your wide receiver 1 or 2 for your fantasy team going against this Colts defense that I mentioned. Runs a ridiculous amount of zone, and where CJ Stroud just really lives and eats. I don't have his numbers up against zone by right this minute, but let's just go ahead, and since I've been talking about Tank Dell so much, let's look at some Tank Dell stats really quick. Tank Dell in 2023, his rookie stats, he appeared in 9.5 games technically. All right, if you look on Pro Football Reference, it's going to tell you 11 because he actually appeared, but he hardly played in those other ones. He was knocked out with a concussion after making a reception in the second quarter of one, and then in the early second quarter of the other, he was knocked out of the game with a broken leg, and he did miss an entire game from that concussion from the previous injury. So on and off, 9.5 games, 75 targets, 47 receptions, 709 yards, 7 touchdowns, 15.1 yards per reception. So a lot of these plays, if there wasn't an end zone or if the field just kept going, Tank Dell would still be running to the end zone. So these are broken plays where he just, or not even broken plays, but he just separated so much from the defense that, he was wide open and he was able to break those plays. So he is a game breaker for me, which is why I value him a little bit higher than the other 2 Texans wide receivers, just simply because he can score a touchdown from anywhere on the field with any time he gets the ball in his hands. So you could throw him a screen and he can house it. He can beat, press man coverage downfield, house it. He can beat zone coverage, find the hole, house it. So that's why, that's why I really, really enjoy Tank Dell and the way that he plays. Here's another quick graphic right here. So Tank Dell led the entire NFL in average scored separation. So that's the ass metric. But there's his separation score, and it's higher than Deontay Johnson, Rashad Bateman. I don't know why those guys were so high up on the list, but it was, I think, a minimum of 150 targets. or something crazy or something like that. So all those other guys still made the list. Tank Dell's probably the only one on here because of his shortened season, which he didn't meet the 150 target requirement or something like that over the last couple of seasons. But regardless of that, if you pay attention, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs are right there hovering in the top 12 in this metric. So elite separators in Houston, but Tank leading the way, obviously. Number one, if you go back to that graphic, number one amongst the Texans receivers in separation. So, and I'm 2 picks away. Actually, I'm 1 pick away. I just took James Cook. Let's come back over here. I'll leave that stat up there for you guys. Ramondre Stevenson, Terry McLaurin just went. Let's see. David Montgomery is still on the board. Raheem Mostert. I feel like I should go running backs because I have Nico and DK. And I feel like, let's see, there's Pickens, Ridley, Adunze, Addison. I'm more inclined to have a running back. I feel like those guys get hurt. It's just a little more valuable. So I'm going to take David Montgomery in this position here and then swing back and see what wide receivers are left. Maybe a Ridley might be nice. I do have Jordan Love. There's a Brian Thomas. So maybe I can find Romeo Dobbs or somebody like that back here on the way back. Khalil Shakur. So there's some players. There are some players. But yeah, definite. This is why I like Tank Dell so much. I saw a lot of film on him. Versus press, versus zone, he makes one cut and he's 3 yards away from his defender. He could be right on, the defender could be right on his hip, and once he makes his cut, he's put in so much separation, it's ridiculous. So if you really go back, you watch the film, and then these metrics back it up. Tank Dell is an elite separator. He's a man amongst boys when it comes to that, gaining separation, and the easiest way to catch a football is when nobody else is around you. So I really love that, not only the film, but like I said, the metrics backing this up for Tank Dell. Let's get into the comments. I see some comments going. I'll guess the same numbers, but 30 plus TDs is top 5. Oh, for Stroud, yeah. That if he hits the 30 plus TDs, then he's definitely in the MVP conversation. He's definitely returning the value for where you're drafting him in drafts. I've personally stayed away from CJ Stroud in most drafts unless it's a super flex or something like that, or he gets pushed back and I get really lucky. Right. So, and I get him at, quarterback 7 or something like that, where I probably think that's a safe place to draft him. Because if he doesn't hit, I think that's probably where he'll fall to 7, 8, but not out of the top 10 range, I don't think. So yeah, I kind of like that comp, man. I like that comp. Tank Dell is like Djax. Yeah. If you the body frame size and stuff like that, definitely that game breaker type mentality. So I do like that comp, Derek. It's really good. Yeah. Basically, Tank is a no-limit soldier. That's right, a solid gold tank, man. He's just a really interesting player. Let's see, Guccini, I just took Tank at the 514 literally 20 minutes ago. Yeah, that's what's up, man. And that's a good spot. See, you're drafting him at the end of the 5th, and you have to get Nico in the 3rd, Diggs in the 4th, early 4th, 3rd sometimes. So, it is what it is there. But I do love that Deshaun Jackson comp, and Bogey, the GMM Network, says Deshaun Jackson was banging blood, gang. Yeah, he was. So Tank Dell, that metric really good. 2 picks until my turn, so I'm not sweating it yet. I did have another metric with that separator graphed out. Let me see if I can find it and load it up really quick. I think I saved it under my pictures here. No, where'd it go? Downloads? No. Oh, it must have been a different computer. Because I do not know where that document went, but it was a nice graph. I shared it with the group chat, and they were able to see that plotted out, and it was like Tank Dell and then like most of the rest of the NFL as far as separation goes. And I'm back on the clock. Pickens went, Robinson went, Ferguson, Godwin, Wilson, Pollard. Calvin Ridley is still available. I like that. I might just go Calvin Ridley here. Xavier Worthy's there. Lad McConkey. Did they take Rashee Rice? Yeah, somebody already took Rashee Rice. Okay. Did they take Reed? I'm sure they took Reed. Yeah, they took Reed. All right, well, I guess I'm going to just take Calvin Ridley here in this spot. There's Jamison Williams, Lad McConkey, Curtis Samuel, Brian Thomas. Actually, yeah, I'll go Calvin Ridley and hope that Brian Thomas is there later, I suppose. All right. Not too worried about this draft. Like I said, you just get some hitters and you start. I've already filled out my entire squad, so it's all bench players at this point. All right. I like it. Good stuff. Let's check the comment section. This episode is missing a cutscene. Oh, I got a cutscene. Did you guys see the new? I didn't even play it for you. I meant to do it, but did you see the new H-Town Huddle intro that I have for this year? I played the Tank Dell recovery film stuff, and then I just started talking, and I forgot to completely play this intro. Yeah, that is what's up. I totally forgot to do that. Sorry. Thank you for reminding me, Tino. That was much appreciated, bro. Yeah, and you're here for that. Yeah, the cutscenes they're coming, and trust me, I will have plenty of clips and stuff like that as the season progresses. Any and every time we talk about, I don't know, somebody like Joe Mixon.
Like big butts and I cannot lie. I like big butts and I cannot lie.
I
like big butts and I cannot lie.
Okay, that one needs to stay on the loop because it's a really short clip. But that's how we roll. And anytime there's a correct answer or a wrong answer, there's something that we don't like somebody starts talking about the Jaggets or something.
Brother,
So we'll keep it fun and lighthearted, everybody. Don't worry about that. Let's see. Just a suggestion, the greatest Texan of all time, J.J. Watt. Yeah, I know. I understand. I got you. I understand. He is the greatest Texan of all time. I don't have anything lined up with him at this point. But yeah, I totally agree with you. In my book, it's J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson, and probably Bobby Fino, man, right after that, Arian Foster. So, and then a whole bunch of other dudes that most people probably don't even know. So, but I do have some of my Texans favorites, like Texans great Kevin Walter. You guys don't remember him, but in the 2012-2013 season, my man was the slot receiver for the Houston Texans, right? If it wasn't Andre Johnson, it was Kevin Walter. Look him up. My brother, yeah, I know, I love it. My daughter, so I had never heard that. I didn't know where it came from. And my 5-year-old daughter at the time was the one who started coming into the kitchen going, brother, and I was like, what is that? And everybody was laughing. They're like, you haven't seen that? So I'm real far behind in the times. I don't know what very demure and all that stuff means. My kids are saying stuff all the time. So, Kevin Walter, you got to be good if you have 2 first names. Yeah, for sure. Look him up, man. The guy was he was something else. He's a clean little, like an Amendola white slot boy. You know what I mean? So those guys are always fun to have because, they kind of they fly under the radar. Tino with the facts here. J.J. Watt once scored 300 fantasy points at defensive tackle. Yeah, dude, that's wild. That was I think probably his 2013 to 2012 season where he had his defensive player of the year nods. Then I think he caught 5 touchdown passes as a tight end, and then he scored 3 defensive touchdowns, 2 pick sixes, and 1 fumble recovery. So that's just nasty. He got so robbed from the league MVP that year, and they just don't go to defensive players, but he definitely deserved it that season. Yeah, the greatest fantasy MVP of all time. Yeah. Remember Steve Slayton? I do remember Steve Slayton. I do. He was slick with it, man. He was he'd do that belly dive, and he was he was very slippery right up the middle. So I do remember Steve Slayton. I do like that. Tate was another guy. He's like a bowling ball back there. Who else? There's plenty of forgotten Houston guys, in the mix. They didn't get a lot of love up until probably this year is the main year where the notion has kind of changed. The Texans, it's okay to like the Texans all of a sudden this year. So I'm down for that. It's been 20 plus years of kind of going out in public and then kind of keeping your head down like this, putting your hat over your head or whatever. Not much to hang your hat on as far as being a Texans fan, but it is what it is, right? We're here now. And JJ was like a mid-range QB for fantasy. Yeah, that's crazy from a defensive lineman standpoint. I know that everybody wants to give Aaron Aaron Donald those like greatest of all time props, but Aaron Donald was not catching touchdown passes as a tight end. I'll tell you that. Derek Carr, yeah, don't remind me. He was the first QB. They did beat the Cowboys in that first ever game that they played, though. Remember that, Derek? Yeah, David Carr. I get him confused all the time too. He's the a-hole on TV. So, who is the better Watt, Tito? Who's the better Watt? Like, as far as career right now, it's still JJ. It's still JJ. But TJ he's still in the league. He's still doing things. If they get anywhere to like winning a Super Bowl, those Steelers, then he definitely can hang that over JJ. His teams were mostly one and done in the playoffs. I think JJ only won 1 or 2 playoff games in his tenure there as a Houston Texan. But yeah, it's definitely JJ. Yeah, he played with a broken. Yeah, he had like a whole shoulder like dislocation. He wore that big old brace. And still swat balls down, JJ swat, as we would call him around these parts. So, but yeah, JJ, he had left the door open to returning. I think the door was more open last season while they were making that push. And then if a defensive lineman had gotten hurt, then they would have used him. I think a lot of things need to go wrong for the Texans this year for JJ Watt to make it back on the field. And so fans wouldn't be necessarily happy to see JJ Watt. I think that would probably mean that another guy got suspended, Will Anderson Jr.'s hurt, Daniil Hunter retired, something like that in order for JJ Watt to make a comeback. So I don't see that happening. I know that he's in tremendous shape and he could probably still play, but unfortunately it's not, I don't see it happening. Healthy JJ Watt was the best defensive player of all time. Something like a Bo Jackson. Yeah, no kidding. He was literally breaking the game on the defensive side, and he was a game wrecker. Like, he was the reason why the Texans won a lot of games. He was the reason why the Texans were in so many games. He literally, wrecked an entire game and scored touchdowns on defense and offense in some of those. So he was the entire Texans team at some point. Yeah, Griffey-esque, definitely something like that. I'm having my little mocktail. It's Cuba Libre. Shout out to Che Guevara for inventing this drink in Cuba. But this one's a non-alcoholic, folks. It's free AF, alcohol free. Yeah, Bo Jackson and Griffey wrecked video games. Unfortunately, JJ Watt was in that era when, Madden still sucked. And it wasn't like 95. Like, if he played like in 95, I'm sure you'd be wrecking with JJ Watt and Madden. All right, 2 picks till my turn. I went receiver, running back. Let's take a gander over here on Sleeper. You guys want me to share let's share my screen while I'm at it. Might as well. Sleeper, share. There you go. All right. Let's make this pick, y'all. Let's make this pick. Okay. Whoa. I am on the clock. Chase Brown just went. Hawkinson. There goes Brian Thomas. Damn it. All right. So Jameson Williams. Devin Singletary. 217. 229. Let's Jerome Ford. All right. I'm going to go receiver here. I think I am going to go Jameson Williams. Let's just scroll down and see if there's anybody else I like. I like Romeo Doubs. I'm going to go Romeo Doubs here instead. All right. Cool deal. Thanks, guys, for bearing with me there. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty good so far. Stroud, Pacheco, Collins, Metcalf, Cook, Montgomery, Ridley, and then now I'm just filling up the bench stuff. Yeah, Shakir is there. I saw that. It's just I'm trying to differentiate some of my players now. So I don't have a lot of Romeo Doubs. I do have a lot of Reed. And since I already have Jordan Love as my other quarterback, I decided to go Doubs there. And maybe I can pick up Wicks. It was one of my last picks or something like that. Shakir, I do think that Shakir will probably be the guy over there with Curtis Samuel hurt. He looked like the best receiver during preseason, just in my opinion. But lots of things. Like, I feel like Diggs kind of did make Allen. And then the play selection changed a little bit last year towards the second half. So, still some question marks, Let's see. I took Romeo over Jameson in a bunch of spots this year. Love Romeo. So there you go. Yeah. Similar minds. Great minds think alike. I think Shakir's wide receiver 1 is me. I'm leaning that also, to be honest, but I also like Dobbs. So JSN's a good pick. Yeah, especially with the news of Lockett still kind of being banged up, right? So those are guys to consider here in my next pick on the go round. So let's take a look at that. I could come back and go running back, but I already have Pacheco, Montgomery, and Cook. I feel okay there. I don't necessarily want to grab somebody like a Singletary. They already took him. But then there's, let's see, Chuba. Chuba's there. I kind of like Chuba to start out the year and be around for a good while. But is he worth what these other receivers are? Probably not. Shakir's still there, and JSN. I already have DK, so I'd probably lean Shakir in this sense. So if Big Game James doesn't take Shakir, I'll probably take Shakir on this particular round. We'll see what happens. Waiting for my pick. But appreciate you guys drafting with me as well. Let's see. Damn, your team is badass for a 14-team Superplex. Yeah, I feel it looks good because I'm not like staring it down, being like, who am I going to take? Oh, see, JSN was just taken right there before me. So forcing my hand a little bit made it easier for me to go Khalil Shakir here, this next pick, if I can find him. There he is. Bling. All right, so potential wide receiver 1 there. I like it. And then we'll see, what second-rate running backs will come around here with the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks of this round. But good deal. All right, back to the task at hand. Stevie B's team is so bad. I didn't see it. Let me see. What does he have? Hurts, Goff, Harrison, McBride. Oh, he has all the tight ends. Zay Flowers, I don't like. McConkey, I don't like. Deontay Johnson, maybe some value there. Okay. Yeah, you're right. His team is kind of at the moment. Maybe it's because he's leaning on that tight end so much. And I don't know if this is a tight end premium league. I don't necessarily think it is. And even if that's the case, it's not going to sway me too much. I'd rather have some of these other playmakers, to be honest. But it is what it is. Let's see. Josh Allen got to throw 30-plus TDs to somebody. Yeah, or regress terribly, right? I mean, Stephon Diggs had like 8 touchdowns, and then I guess they all went somewhere else during the second half of the season. So since we're kind of speaking on the Bills and Stephon Diggs, let's take a look at Stephon Diggs' stats from last season. 2003 in Buffalo, he had 160 targets, 107 receptions, 1,183 yards, 8 touchdowns, and an 11.1 yards per reception rate. Not bad for a guy going into his, 9th, 10th season. I think he was drafted in 2015. Spent 4, 6. I don't remember how many he spent in Minnesota. But the last 4 in Buffalo, where he put up really, decent numbers. Let me see if I can break him down by the year, because this has been a big thing. Been a lot of talk about will he come in and has he lost a step? Let's see, 11.3, his 8 touchdowns. Trying to see his catch rate, 66.9, which was actually the second lowest of his career. I think his second year in Buffalo is at 62%. So there it is. Yards per target was just a little bit above one of his worst years in Minnesota. So statistically, it wasn't even one of his worst years ever, to be honest. He had, I think, his third year in Minnesota and his second year in Buffalo were probably the worst. And he made the Pro Bowl in all 4 of his years in Buffalo. So AP1 Pro Bowler second year, AP2 Pro Bowler in the third year, and then the Pro Bowler last year as well. 5 years in Minnesota. He played 70 games there, 66 in Buffalo. So put up a ton of yards, 5,300 plus yards in 4 years in Buffalo, and he didn't even hit that number in 5 years in Minnesota. Obviously, one of those is his rookie year, right? So, still not bad, not bad at all. And like I said, I think he's still a great player who has a lot to offer the Houston Texans. A lot of the chatter is that he's like not a team player. Let's see. Tino says Diggs got a lot of juice left, no injuries really. Yeah, no, none that I can remember, to be honest. Yeah, none that I can remember, to be honest. So he. One of the big things is availability. The Texans wide receiver core missed several games combined last year, which is why we saw guys like Noah, Antonio Brown go off for consecutive 150-yard games in back-to-back weeks with the absence of Tank Dell and then Nico Collins coinciding right when both of those were happening. So not only was one or the other off in some of those games, but I think in one of those games, both of them were missing. So Noah became the top target for CJ. And so with that in place, when you have guys like Noah Brown going off for 150 yards 2 weeks in a row, with the absence of your other two stud wide receivers, that's why they brought in a guy like Stephon Diggs, right? In case one of these guys does go down, or in case the defense has two great corners, locking people down on the outside, or a really tough nickel corner who doesn't allow the guy in the slot to make moves or get the ball. They can spread the ball around, they can figure out the defense, they can adjust, and then they'll be able to overcome whatever it is. So last year in the playoffs when they faced the Ravens, it was just Nico Collins, right? Against some of the best secondary guys in the league, right? Shutting them down. So it's tough when you're depleted, you don't have the top level talent like some of these other teams to compete. And especially when a lot of folks didn't expect you to even be there in the first place and they just kind of show up out of nowhere, right? So this year, Texans offseason reloaded, retooled, being a little more aggressive, opening up the playbook. Second year was Slowick, everybody feeling more comfortable, and then everybody on the same page with, hey, the goal is a Super Bowl right out the gate. Last year was the goal is let's not look embarrassing, right? And let's put 1 foot in front of us, one game at a time, step by step. Still same mentality, but I feel like the goal this year is always Super Bowl. Last year, the goal was maybe halfway through the season. Oh, okay, we're okay. Playoffs. And then once they locked in, I guess maybe it was a playoff game for the last 4 weeks of the season for the Texans. If they lost one of them, they were out. So they were in playoff mode every week from them. And by the time they got to the second round of the actual playoffs, they may have been a little burned out with all that pressure. Who knows? But I feel like they're a little more equipped this year to take that next step and really compete with those guys in the divisional round and then hopefully the championship conference round, right, where the Texans have never been. They did make a divisional appearance a couple years ago in 2019 under Deshaun Watson, where they went up 24-0 very early in that game. I started drinking very heavily when we were up 24-0 because I had a feeling, I just knew that things were going to go wrong. And my wife was like, why are you slamming those down? And she's like, why are you so nervous? And I was pacing in front of the TV, and I just knew that game was not going to end well. And it didn't. Anyways, we're over it. We're back, baby. The rebuild has been completed. Thank you, David Culley. Thank you, Lovie Smith. Thank you, the Colts, for blowing that last game and giving us the second overall pick, which turned into C.J. Stroud and not Bryce Young. So a lot of things had to happen for the Texans to get into this position. Thank you, NFL, for not imposing a super heavy fine and not allowing us to get Nick Caserio after we tampered with him a year before he was hired. So a lot of stuff like that. Last year, was I surprised by the Texans? I felt like we thought they were in rebuild, and then it turned into they're a threat fast. Yeah, so I was a little surprised. If you guys heard me talking last year in some of these early season, before the season stuff, shows that we were doing, I was all in on the Texans being much better than people thought, bringing in a whole bunch of savvy vets to kind of fill in the gaps. And then they kept some of those guys into that third year, which was last year. But I did think they were going to win about 7 or 8 games. I didn't think that they would win the division or sneak into the playoffs. So I was a little ahead of the rebuild, I think, but I was definitely calling 2024 to be probably what happened last year. So I think the Texans are a whole year ahead of me in those regards, which is great for us Texans fans, honestly, because now we're in a position to where, like, hey, we're like the Lions now. The Lions have Super Bowl aspirations. People are talking about the Lions like they could, run the table. So I like that, especially because, like I said, it's been several years of just being like, okay, we're kind of a football team. But we're also a laughing stock in certain situations, bad trades, bad GM, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So it is my pick over here on Sleeper. I'm going to turn my attention back to the quarterbacks, and it doesn't look like there's any other starters available at this moment. So I'm going to do a sneaky, and I'm going to pick Taysom Hill because I know that he has quarterback availability or eligibility. Oh shit! Somebody already take him? Somebody already took him. Okay, fuck. All right. Well then, Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks. I'm going to snack Brandon Cooks here unless there's a running back I like. Tyler Algier. Oh, I'm going to grab Ray Davis. No. I'm going back on my word here. I am going to go Brandon Cooks. Take some old vets. I got 4 picks, and with those last 4 picks I have, I'll probably go high upside guys. All right. Sorry about that. Like and subscribe. Bogart says he made the phone call in regards to the rebuild. I appreciate the phone call, my friend. I really do. I mean, we are here now, and we're doing it. But like I said, I expect this 3-headed monster to be something to be reckoned with. And the last part of that puzzle, that 3-headed monster, is the Texans' de facto wide receiver 1, according to the ledger, the money books. This is the guy that they paid 3 years, $72 million. They jumped out way ahead on that before any of these other guys started signing massive deals. So they got him relatively cheap. They got him locked in, and he's producing, top 12 numbers in many categories. So I feel like the Texans really got a steal. They did this the right way. They didn't wait to pay their guy, knowing that they're going to have to pay him eventually, and they got nobody else to pay regardless. If things work out with Diggs and they can continue with that second year of his contract, or they can wipe their hands from it and get out of it clean. So I think a lot of people don't realize that if things don't work out with Diggs, the Texans kind of wrote an insurance policy into his 2-year deal, which it's really more of like a 1-year type thing. It's front loaded. But yeah, like I said, the Texans in a sense protected themselves there, but nothing bad has come out of camp. It's all been good. Stephon Diggs has been named a team captain. They put a C on his chest. He is a savvy vet. He's been staying after practice. Tank Dell is in his hip pocket every single day, learning, as much as he can from him. They're both very similar as far as we recently shared a podcast with the other guys, but they're very similar as far as their style and how they like to do things and hang out. Well, Nico is a little bit more all business, kind of just show up plain Jane, doesn't get all dripped out, doesn't really care about that stuff, kind of just shows up and does work. But 80 receptions on 109 targets, 1,297 yards, 8 touchdowns, and a 14.8 yard per reception, which is also exceptionally high. You're looking at the 2 outside receivers, or the 2 receivers returning from last year for the Texans, both hanging around 15 yards per reception each. Woo, nasty. So you'd love to see that if those trends continue, and I think that they will, like I said, with the addition of Diggs, more solidified offensive line, a better play calling, better run game, then all of these things should increase. We'll see a maturation of the playbook and hopefully that next step for CJ Stroud, not a sophomore slump. So I'm back on the clock. Gabe Davis is there, Mike Williams, Roman Wilson. Let's go. I'm going to hit my watch list. I have some guys on the watch list. Let's hit all. Ray Davis is still there. Jordan Mason, Jalen Wright, who's a guy that I really like. He's not a starter. There's Antonio Gibson. Yeah. I'm gonna do this move here. I'm gonna take Jalen Wright here and kind of reach, but there's only a couple picks left. This guy could explode onto the scene with an injury to one of the other running backs, so I kind of like that. I'm gonna take him as a flyer there, and I'll probably do the same on the way back later on. But I like to, with my last few picks, I like to take flyers on guys that I could possibly drop after week 1 or so, or week 2. Don't have to hold on to them too long. And if there's an apparent injury from now until the game starts, then you don't have to, head to the waiver wire, rush over there and try to pick up this particular person when he's already on your team, right? There's better opportunities than probably Tyler Algier in a backup role this year, where there was no Arthur Smith to utilize 2 running backs anymore, right? So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, Nico Collins, he's a baller. I could give you, let's give you some Nico Collins breakdowns. Oh, I didn't even highlight Tank Dell's awesome work versus the Colts last year. So the Colts, I did mention they run the highest rate of zone. Tank Dell versus zone in entire 2023 last year, 58 targets, 35 receptions, 501 yards, 5 touchdowns, 115.1 fantasy points. So the majority of his work came versus zone. He's going to play versus zone this Sunday. He's going to eat versus zone this Sunday. Just letting you guys know. Versus man, it's a lot smaller sample size. Apparently people were kind of scared to man up and play man against Tank. And here's why. 17 targets versus man, 12 receptions, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 50 fantasy points. So 12 catches, 17 targets versus man, 208 yards, 2 of those are touchdowns, 50 fantasy points. Tank Dell eats versus both man and zone, but he eats even more versus zone, and that is what the Colts love to run. So just a preview or a highlight of what is to come this Sunday. I'm expecting Tank Dell to have a really good game. If he doesn't, probably no surprise, right? It's going to go back to what everybody was saying. There's too many mouths to feed and this and that and blah, 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 but I don't see it. I see the Texans receivers working hard to get open, and whoever's open is going to get the football because that's how CJ Stroud operates, and that's what's going to happen. And I mentioned to you before, Tank Dell is the best #1 separator in the entire NFL as far as metrics from last season. So if he's getting open, he's going to get the football, right? So personally, I know that Pro Football Focus, I think, PFF, had scored or done some projections as far as the Texans wide receiver group. They had Nico Collins first, they had Tank Dell second, and then they had Stephon Diggs at just under 1,000 yards. And this is as far as yardage goes, not TDs and number of receptions and things like that, but they were just talking total yardage. So Nico Collins first, I think with about 1,200, Tank at about 11 or close to 1,100, and then Diggs hovering around 950 or so. So I can see that breakdown working, especially with Diggs being kind of like this intermediate type of guy. I see him working on probably opposite of Dalton Schultz in a lot of these situations where you can have Tank split out wide, you have Nico out wide, and then you'll have, your tight end here, and then you'll have Diggs here, and they'll be running those short intermediate kind of crossing things, intermediate to extended, right? So I do see a lot of work for everybody. CJ's probably going to read, the way that the play develops, 1, 2, 3, all the way down, and he'll go from deepest target back in. So a lot of times Diggs may not be the #1 target, but we did see on several occasions where it's 3rd and short, 3rd and intermediate, and you got to pick up a first down. CJ will thread the needle to Diggs like he did in the preseason versus the Steelers, I believe. So we did get to see them on the field, all 3 of these guys out on the field together in that preseason game where they had extended action. And minus, if you want to take away some penalties, each of these guys saw like 2 to 3 targets, and all of them had decent yardage. So that's the way I expect it to go. I don't think that you're missing out or you took a wrong choice by taking, Diggs over Collins or however it may have worked out for you. I think that you'll be very happy with any one of the Texans receivers that you got this season. And so long as they're all 3 on the field, they're all just going to help each other eat. I don't think it's going to eat into anybody else's production. The Texans still had trouble making the run the focal point of their offense, allowing that to be the driving force of their offense. They had to throw to set up the run on many occasions. So, I kind of see it falling in line the same way this year. CJ Stroud is the real threat. You let CJ cook. You throw to set up the run for Mixon. Mixon can catch out of the backfield. So that's the kind of way that I see things kind of shaking out for the Texans this season, especially early on here in week 1 versus the Colts, who I think have a pretty good D-line and are pretty decent versus the run. So you'll probably see the Texans open it up versus their zone coverage a little bit more. Speaking of Joe Mixon, Sir Mix-a-Lot, here he is. And I didn't do him any justice. Here you go. All right, so Joe Mixon last year in Cincinnati, 257 carries. Holy moly. 1,034 yards. Not great as far as efficiency, but 4 yards a carry on that average isn't bad, right? It's not the end of the world. There's plenty of other running backs who've done way worse. So 9 touchdowns on the ground. He did see, I believe, 18 opportunities inside the 10, so only converting half of those isn't great, where I think other running backs in that range converted about 13. I can't remember who the other 2 running backs were that I saw that metric in, but if that number takes a positive regression, then he'd have even more rushing touchdowns on the ground for the Texans in scoring opportunities, better scoring opportunities than Cincinnati had last year with an oft-injured Joe Burrow and a backup quarterback playing for them. So, and then here's the really special part about Sir Joe Mix-a-Lot. 64 targets, 52 receptions. So really high clip of converting those targets into catches. And then 376 receiving yards and 3 receiving TDs. I'm back on the clock, guys. Demario Douglas. Ugh. Okay, so that wasn't my pick. Demarcus Robinson's here. I don't like Jermaine Burton. I'm fine taking a flyer on McCaffrey, Greg Dortch. Let's see if I can. What running backs? Wilson, Carson Steele. P. Ryan's probably there. Let me take it off my watch list. Antonio Gibson, Jamal Williams, Damian Pierce, Bucky Irving. Kind of interested in Bucky Irving, but I'll probably save those running back picks for my last 2. Ricky Pearsall. So I'm going to take Demarcus Robinson as the wide receiver 3, I suppose. I don't even feel good about that. I got 15 seconds to make a pick. I'm going to go Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals. Fuck it. Okay. All right. Love to pivot. Here we go. Who should we look out to be the Christian Harris replacement while he's down for the count? I'm going to say, unfortunately, it's going to be Jake Hansen. Who? Yeah, that's the next guy in line because he plays on the outside side, right behind Harris. So he'd be the next man in line as far as the depth chart is concerned. Actually, I totally forgot to look up the Texans depth chart. The unofficial one came out yesterday, but I do believe that the official depth chart came out today. Depth chart, Texans. And this might shed some light as far as that goes for the defense. All right, let's get to a share screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Present mode, share the screen, share, and depth chart Texas. Here we go. All right, can I zoom in? Yes, no, okay, sorry. So listed, Christian Harris is still listed here because he's not officially on the IR. Right, but he will be out. You notice how he's in parentheses. And then the next man up, like I mentioned, Jake Hansen. So we'll see how he does, but I would keep an eye out also for Delshawn Phillips to move from the other side and maybe replace Hansen if he's been playing better. Now, I do still think that it's Hansen over Phillips in just for now, but we'll see how the snap counts shake out during this first game this week. But good question there from the chat. Bogart, really appreciate that. Try to answer that as best as I could. Jake Hansen would be the next man up. Now, I believe he's had some very limited playing time or role or experience out there, but if he's going to be out there, that's the thing. Harris being injured with the calf injury, being extra cautious, that's one of the areas where I am worried for the Texans, especially given the fact that AR likes to take off running. If one of these guys, has his back to him, or he was spying and he misses his assignment, it's not Christian Harris, who's like a freak athlete. I really love him in the defense. So that's one area definitely of concern. Hansen covering linebackers, covering tight ends as well. I think the tight end area is another place for the Texans defense is a little susceptible to being attacked. But we'll see if that's part of the game plan for the Colts, right? So we shall see. But breaking this down real quick, this is what I pulled off a couple of days ago. I believe the line changed ever so slightly. The spread from -1 to like 1.5 or 2.5, something to that effect. But the over-under is still at 48.5. It should be a shootout, according to odds makers. So we should be in line for an under the radar. Oh man, I'm back on the clock. An under the radar game as far as fantasy points and just fantasy goodness, and as far as how everything shakes out and goes in this game. All right, I'm back to my watch list. I took Wilson. I should probably take some running backs. I'm gonna just take Carson Steele here. Consider him a steal. And then I'm going to add P. Ryan to my list as well. Somebody took him. No, he's still there. All right. And then I'll take P. Ryan later. He's a little less exciting, kind of boring. So I'll take the rest of the Chiefs backfield with my last pick here. And I'll be able to drop one of these guys and pick somebody up in a week or two once it kind of shakes out for sure. Whether P. Ryan is just a passing down, change of pace guy, or Carson Steele gets some goal line work or some, a driver here. He looks really impressive with the football. Just a deep sleeper to watch and put on my bench and see what happens and drop him later if I need to. Back to the Texans. And we've been rolling here for a minute. Let's we're at an hour already. Nice. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor, neonpeacockmerch.com. Make sure you guys head on over to the website, neonpeacockmerch.com. You will find a 40% off sale happening right now as we speak. Plus, all t-shirts are $12.50. And I just realized that I don't have that video clip loaded here, so we're just going to have to roll without the commercial. But good stuff. Actually, if I change the brand, I can roll the commercial real quick. But I don't want to do that. It's fine. So, anywho, back to the task at hand. I was talking about the matchup this Sunday. We've gone over Diggs. We talked about Tank, a little bit about Mixon. We talked about Stroud. We did mention the defense a little bit, but not that much, right? So on the opposite side of the football for the Colts, right, they obviously have A.D. Mitchell in the wide receiver group, the young rookie who looks promising. Looks like he's going to make the start because Downs is hurt. Doesn't look like he'll be making the game or suiting up for the game, at least I should say. I'm not entirely sure on that, but the other receiver, obviously, of note there is Michael Pittman, who will be covered by our man Derek Stingley, who has become shut down and started living up to his name and draft capital a couple of years ago when he was taken before Sauce Gardner. In my opinion now, I do believe that he is a better cover corner than Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner is a little more physical, handsy, bats the ball down, gets some PIs that don't necessarily get put on the books, right, as it's a PI. They don't get put down in the books as any form of stat. Derek Stingley, on the other hand, kind of baits you into making a throw, quick closing speed, ball hawk, right? So 5 interceptions last year, and he was out for about 6 games, so he only played in about 12. Really came on strong last year. Now that he's gotten over this kind of injury bug and stuff since, when he was drafted, and he played mostly a full season last year, he really showed out, and I'm expecting him to have a breakout season this year. And just be our number one shutdown corner, man. Like that's what it is. Like he is a dog. He's the man. You see him right here, right underneath my picture. They got the dark shades on. He's rocking the number 24. It's my favorite number. The dude can cover. And not only that, but now that Jalen Petrie has moved back to his original nickel position, and he's in the box, hitting people hard, causing havoc. He had a pick 6 versus Daniel Jones. He had a tackle for loss on Derek Stingley. And so he's in there making his presence felt. I think that, the wreaking havoc of that, then you have these guys covering and flying in the back half. We're going to see a lot of turnovers for that Houston Texans defense. And they are going to be caused mostly by the nightmare fuel, which is Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Now, these guys, just look at them. If that ain't nightmare fuel, I don't know what is. Scary, scary stuff. Opposing quarterbacks are going to have both of these guys, like, their peripheral vision is going to be fucked because they are going to be wanting to know where these guys are at all times. You cannot double team these dudes off the edge. They are going to cause a lot of problems for folks. They're going to need to get the ball out quick versus the Texans. And when that happens, like I said, they should have quick enough linebackers and secondary guys out there to cover and create turnovers. And if you hold on to the football, these guys are coming for it. So nightmare fuel in full effect. I do expect them to put a lot of pressure, apply tons of pressure on Anthony Richardson early and often on the road in Indianapolis, trying to test them. Hey, beat us with your arm. We're going to destroy that RPO. We're going to try to get to you in the backfield, and we're going to force you to play quarterback and beat us that way. So really excited to see both of these guys on the field at the same time, wreaking havoc. I expect a lot of 3-and-outs for the Texans defense throughout the course of the season, especially against lesser offenses. Now, I do know that they have the 4th toughest strength of schedule in the NFL, but at the same time, if you're one of the better teams, that's what you get, and that's the way you play it, right? So if they can, show up and do what they do every week and take care of business, right, and they're in these games and they're giving themselves a chance to win, then I think C.J. Stroud can do it. If you got 40 seconds left on the clock and you're going to be hitting the the squabble in the end zone, Baker Mayfield, like you left too much time on the clock, bro. And that's how these teams are going to treat it. These two guys are going to pin their ears back. Once Danico Autry gets back from suspension, I mean, we should have a much better interior defensive line that wreaks havoc, like I said, and really causes a lot of pressure for these opposing QBs. All right, so I'm either going to take P. Ryan with my last pick, or who else do I got? McCaffrey's there. Mechie, no. Malik Washington, no. Counting. Jordan Whittington, no. Yeah, I'll probably just take. Oh shoot, I don't see P. Ryan anymore. Where did he go? I think I'll just take P. Ryan. Just take the whole backfield. Give me that. All right, I'm done with the draft. Nice. Good work, folks. We can close Sleeper down as far as that goes. Talking about Will Anderson Jr., the addition of Danielle Hunter. Like I said, Texans, they went out in free agency. Kudos to our man Nick Caserio, who's just been wheeling and dealing since his days with the New England Patriots. And he came in here and he got it done, right? So good stuff there. Already talked about Stroud, talked about Tank. Oh, let's talk about DeForest Buckner and some pressure up the middle. He did have 8 sacks last year, so interior offensive line for the Houston Texans is going to need to step up. We do have the highest paid tackles in the game, basically. It feels like, with Laramie Tunsil, obviously, like one of the best in the game. And then Titus Howard on the other side. You pay the guy, gets a huge bag, plays 7 games, gets hurt. Don't see him the rest of the year. He did have a little mishap during training camp as well, where he was out a little bit. And I got flipping scared. I was like, great, there goes another offensive lineman. Seems like that was the case all of last year. I think there were 17 different offensive lineman combinations. Guess what? There's only 17 games that they could have played. So not one single game where they had any continuity with their offensive line, yet they still managed 10 regular season wins, a playoff trouncing of the Browns, and they've set themselves up very nicely for a really good 2024 where people are still doubting them, but they've gotten so much better. And it's like, well, now you can't sneak up on anybody. Bro, it's fucking football. You lace up your shoes, you're going to play, you never take the other team across from you lightly. Like, what are they doing? And then you know that CJ Stroud's a rookie and you're coming in and trying to blitz him and hurt him and stuff. And then he started picking people apart. They had to stop treating him like a rookie. So this year, I'm all in on my Texans. I think they're very good. I think they have a great chance to run the division once again. I'm not scared of any of these other teams. I'm not scared of the Colts. I am not scared of the Jaguars. I'm definitely not scared of the Titans. So, you know, the division runs through us. It's going to be a tough going. You have that target on your back. But like I said, I think the Texans have done enough, both sides of the ball. They kept their special teams coach. They produced 4 special teams touchdowns last year, guys. I don't know if you guys realize that, but they had 2 punt returns for touchdowns, 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, and they were just killer in that regard. They didn't allow any punt returns or kickoff returns for touchdowns either. They were just really good, solid in that game. Kaimi Fairbairn was great, even when he was hurt. Danny Amendola filled in admirably, but we had Daria Agubamwale kicking game-winning field goals for us and shit. So this Texans team has some reserve. They have a goal. They all have a little bit of dog in them. You've heard several occasions that they say that Houston isn't for everyone. You know, not everybody can come play here is what they've said. So I really like that attitude, that kind of like us against the world type of deal. Everybody's tight-knit. They're going out together. They go bowling. They hang out. CJ Stroud has a church group with the guys. Everybody's gotten like tons more into their faith, from the coaching staff to all the way to like rookie guys that you hear on press conferences. So the whole culture really changed. It's shifted. We've done a complete 180. We are here where we are now. CJ Stroud last year went into the Loud House, made it the Stroud House, as Pat McAfee said, and took over from the get-go with that 70-some yard bomb to Nico Collins on the first play of the game. Didn't look back after that. So like I said, there will be some pressure up the middle from these guys, but a good way to counteract that pressure up the middle is your hot routes with some of your shifty slot wide receivers. And Dalton Schultz, who we didn't really talk about, had 635 yards from scrimmage last year in his first year as a Texan. It's only going to get better. He did look like a security blanket for CJ Stroud, not only during the course or towards the end of the season last year, but also to start the preseason this year. So I do think that he has been overlooked. he's kind of being left for dead as far as the tight ends go, because there's a 3-headed monster in front of him and there's not going to be enough to go around. But if you go back and you look at that first preseason game where Dalton Schultz plays a half, he has 2 targets, about 45 yards. I mean, that's all you need from a tight end, and he only played 1 half. So if all the other guys are covered, guess who's going to sneak open down the field streaking, right? And he's a huge target for CJ. He knows how to get open. He's a savvy vet. The dude's a Stanford guy, so he's pretty smart. Has like a computer programming degree, knows how to program video games and whatnot. So I like Dalton Schultz this year. Could be sneaky. Keep him on your radar. He has a good week 1 against the Colts. Might be somebody you're flying to for the waiver wire. So just, keep an eye on that. I don't think that he's going to be super spectacular and like the world on fire by any means, but he could be a good bye-week filler at your tight end position, especially when they're playing a defense who isn't so well against that tight end spot. So we will have an edge battle. They do have Latu, the new rookie pick over there for the Colts, that will be facing, like I mentioned earlier, Tunsil and Howard are high-paid, highly touted tackles who are, tasked with, that's too many T's, they're tasked with protecting C.J. Stroud this coming Sunday, and I do hope they do that. If you can keep C.J. Stroud clean, he can eat. Last year, the first game versus the Colts, week 2 versus the Colts, I think he was sacked 6 times. Not good at all. So if we can keep C.J. Stroud clean, preferably no sacks, right? But if we can keep him to 2-3 sacks a game, then we're probably winning that shit, right? They also have E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin, who's going to be matched up in the passing game versus Joe Mixon, who I do like as a passer, creeping out of the backfield. You have all these 3 guys. You have anyone in particular who could be playing out of the slot. E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin are going to be keying in on those. Mixon is probably going to be an afterthought in the passing game, so I do like him to sneak out of the backfield for a couple of long gainers in this game. I do know that Speed and Franklin are pretty decent in covering, but at the same time, they're talking mad smack over the offseason. So I think C.J. Stroud is ready to come out and kind of show the Colts what he's made of this season. I think he really wants to kind of just come in here and blow these guys out of the water and say, hey, you can't compete with us. Kind of like the way you pushed us around in week 2 of last season. And kind of like the way he came out and dominated on offense versus them in the quote unquote, division winning game or whatever it was at the end of the season last year, right before the playoff game. So that game was a playoff game, essentially. CJ Stroud was just too much for their defense. I know it was still close, but our defense was horrible last year. And I think that Gardner Minshew did a really good job of just taking what the Texans defense gave to him. And on a lot of occasions, they were deep plays because our secondary corners were ass outside of Derek Stingley. So it is what it is there. That's one way, like I said, if they can protect AR, right, and give him time in the pocket, and he has time to throw to other people other than Derek Stingley, then he's going to test the rookie cornerback Kamari Lassiter, who's going to be making his NFL debut. We haven't seen much of Kamari Lassiter at all, and to be honest, I haven't seen any other than a couple of highlights in training camp where he was able to knock a ball away from Stephon Diggs and another one away from Nico Collins, and he got an interception off of that's Kalen Bullock, the rookie safety, who got an interception off of Matt Stafford in joint practice. So those 2 rookies who are going to be starting at high safety, free safety, and opposite corner of Derek Stingley are going to definitely be guys to watch. Probably be matched up against somebody like A.D. Mitchell or who's the other receiver? I mean, it's not Downs because Downs probably won't be playing, but Gold maybe, or Alec Pierce, I guess. So I do like the fact that outside of the top deal there, the Colts don't have like big time names for these young guys to get tested. So we'll just see how that plays out. That's probably going to be the matchup to watch. Kamari Lassiter either against Pierce or A.D. Mitchell. So that should be interesting. Yo, what up, AJ? What's going on, man? Thank you for dropping by. Appreciate it. Yeah. This a Dell, Diggs, or Nico game. Aha. So if you pulled in late, I did kind of mention that all 3 of them are viable options. Obviously, whichever one you drafted, you're probably sticking in your starting lineup. But I'm telling people to feel confident in Tank Dell if they drafted him as the 3rd Texans wide receiver, like in round 4 or 5 or whatever it is. Go ahead and fire him up in your flex spot. I'm totally confident. Some of the metrics that I was talking about, Tank Dell versus zone last season, 35 catches on 58 targets, 501 yards, 5 touchdowns, 115 fantasy points. That's versus zone. The Colts run the highest rate of zone in the league. They've kept their defensive coordinator. Doesn't look like that's going to change. And they've kept their entire secondary as well. So it's going to be the same group out there trying to cover a Tank Dell who went off on them second half of the first game last year, and a Nico Collins who totally ate them up without Tank Dell in the lineup at the last game of the regular season. Tank Dell also versus man, in case they decide to switch it up. I did mention he's 12 of 17, 12 catches on 17 targets, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. So 50 fantasy points. He killed it, man. He killed it. He kills it versus zone. He kills it versus man. He does it all. And I did mention also, I brought the metric up. Here we go. That he's an elite separator. You want to look at the elitist of elite separators in the NFL last season. Tank Dell tops the list in his 11 games that he played as far as the separation score. And then if you look down towards number 10 and 11, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs with Buffalo, still with a pretty nice separation rate, but nowhere near Tank Dell right there. And then if you look, the next closest guys to Tank Dell, notable names would be Ayuk, and then Evans, and then Garrett Wilson. So Tank Dell in a class of his own. I think it's going to be a tank game, even if they, like I said, even if they try to put their best DB on Tank. He's just an elite separator. I think that's just going to spell more trouble for the Colts in that regards. And the CJ is going to, he's going to be hitting the guy who's open. So if you're going to put your best guy on Tank and Tank can get open, he's still going to throw it to him. But then that just means that there's more chances for Diggs and Nico to get open. But I do love Tank in this game, particularly. I'm not scared to start him at all. And I'm not scared to start any of them. But if I had to guess who's going to have the biggest game, in my opinion, my humble opinion, a nod to Spencer, I think it would be a Tank Dell game. But that's just me. That's just me. Nico Collins, he is the de facto number one over there, like I mentioned, because they gave him the money, 3 years, $72 million. And he's just a beast in his own rights with his own metrics. So it's going to be really hard to stop this offense either way. I do think that if somebody's going to break one, it's going to be Tank Dell over the top on a blown coverage or something. So, or look for him to even break tackles and get in the end zone. I like the fight in the guy. He's 5'9", $165 soaking wet, but the kid's got some grit, and grit don't quit. So love that. Love that. Spencer, I think the Colts are y'all's biggest threat if AR is healthy. Yeah, for sure. If AR comes out and he's running all over the place and we just don't have an answer for that, then yeah, I'm fucking scared, right? It's a bit unfair because you have a running back at QB, but it is what it is. You got to stop it regardless, right? So that is probably, yeah, I think you're right. And it showed last year too with the Colts being, right there playing for that playoff spot with the Texans and Gardner Minshew at the helm. So I think the Colts have a really good, solid team. It probably fits quarterback play that's a little bit more like Joe Flacco, to be honest, somebody who's accurate and can stretch the field, unlike Gardner Minshew, who's just accurate, not really a field stretcher. AR has the field stretching ability with his arm, not the accuracy. So I don't know how this is going to work. And then if you can keep him upright and not get injured when he does decide to take off, then yeah, they should be some trouble, right? At least in that regards. But still tons of question marks for a guy who's essentially still a rookie. He's only played 17 games since high school, which is ridiculous. I think Davis Mills played more than that in just college in that one season that he played. So the COVID year or something. So it's just really strange. Oh, I forgot to mention Davis Mills locked up and extended as of this morning. One more year into the 2025 season, $5 million. So nice money to be CJ Stroud's backup. $5 million. Pretty good. Must be nice. Must be nice to have a Texans team actually go all in. Yeah, they're not just say that they're going all in, right? I saw a clip the other day of when Jerry Jones cut Danny Amendola. I was like, oh man, I forgot that happened, but crazy. But yeah, I feel for you, AJ. If you're a Dallas fan, Jerry Jones, bro. I mean, it is what it is. I'm sorry. I think I have a drop for Jerry Jones. Did I put it in here? Oh, no, it's not in here. It's on the other page. It's all good. But we do have a Crypt Keeper laugh for Jerry Jones. I'll make sure to get all those loaded up for next week. That way I can have a really good stream going for you guys, and you don't have to worry. All the cutscenes will be there. But I did mention the Nightmare. Yeah, the Nightmare Fuel. So I thought that was pretty cool. where was I? I know I was talking about, we were talking about AR. That's correct. So AR could, like I said, a lot of people are drafting him really, really high, probably too rich for my blood in fantasy football terms. It's just screams bust at the, where you're having to, what you're having to pay for him. You're foregoing other great options out there that could be there for you all season. The only thing I'm worried about with AR is one, accuracy, right? Passing yards. I think he's good enough to put up some decent numbers, but like we saw with that preseason game, it was kind of like those scripted plays where he was on. It was all short near the line of scrimmage. Anything a little further down the field looked a little off, a little forced. So maybe it's going to take some time for his shoulder injury to fully heal, or for him to be really comfortable, or to get the timing down right. But we did hear things with the the Bengals joint practice that he was just throwing to spots. He was probably at the top of his drop back, throwing it to a spot or on a timing issue. And that's why we saw that pick six versus Cincinnati third stringers in the second quarter. So it's things like that I think that he's going to have to clean up and correct, and issues that we had with AR, when he was coming into the NFL that we knew. And for me, just because you're big and huge and athletic and stuff doesn't mean you should automatically get that bid and be looked at by all the schools and be given all the chances. We get that you have the tools, but you have to put it all together at one. If you want to take somebody, I know it's two completely different positions, Anthony Richardson and then Tank Dell. Tank Dell went to like a junior college and then had to like put up numbers there, and then transferred to Last Chance U and put up numbers there, and then transferred to Houston and put up insane numbers and led all of college football for 2 years in a row. And still people didn't look at him or want to know what he was about, said that he was too small, not good enough. Got drafted in the third round only because CJ Stroud, he told him to put in number. He said, hey, come get me. He had already had some combos with Stroud. Stroud got drafted day one, went out to Houston that night, met with Tank Dell, had that conversation, said, hey, put in a good word for me, met with the team, I think the following day, which was the day that Tank gets drafted. The whole second round goes through. Stroud has already been in communications with the front office, has already taken the tour with Will Anderson, done that stuff, said, hey, I stayed over with Tank Dell last night or whatever. He showed me around Houston. He's from here. Take a look at his stuff if he's not on your radar. Boom, Texans take that third round pick that they had from the Browns, use it to trade up a few spots. I don't remember exactly how many it was, somewhere around 10, I think, and drafted Tank Dell at pick number 69. So it took all of these things just for Tank Dell to be a third round pick. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson probably blows up a couple of games in college. A lot of question marks. People think he's some generational freak, and he's drafted number 4 overall in the entire NFL. So those are those things that where I feel like a lot of teams and players and GMs make a mistake. You want to look at, I like production, I like experience, I like having it on film. I also like those freak athletes, those great plays, but like for fantasy, I'm picking those guys with my last picks in the draft. I'm taking Jaden Daniels late. I'm taking Carson Steele, like you saw, Malik Washington, dudes that could do that. Those guys aren't being drafted in the top 4 rounds of your fantasy drafts. So that's why I think Anthony Richardson is a huge bust potential, especially because we haven't seen it, and there's still so much meat that could be left on the table. And I think that meat is just going to cost you your season because you're paying too high of a price to have him on your team when you can get somebody like Jaden Daniels way later. And you guys know all about that stuff. You guys are savvy fantasy folks. But yeah, I mentioned Nico Collins, right? I didn't throw out these numbers for Nico versus the Colts, but let's go ahead and just throw Nico back up on the big board real fast. Where are those pictures? Nico stats. So Nico in his first game versus the Colts, this is also the week that Tank Dell had a great second half, but Nico went 7 catches, 146 yards, and 1 touchdown in week 2 versus the Colts. And then in his final game versus the Colts, the last game of the season, 9 catches, 195 yards, and 1 touchdown. So he's just a Colt killer. Nico Collins is what T.Y. Hilton was to the Texans. Nico Collins is now that to the Colts. So he is a Colt killer. He did have a breakout season last year. It was his 3rd year. His yards, his yak by season. So rookie year, yak 4.0. 2022, 3.9, both with Davis Mills at QB. Enter CJ Stroud. Nico Collins' yak jumped from 4.0 to 6.9, folks. Almost 7 yards of yak It's just wild. Like he nearly doubled his yak, and I think that has to do with Bobby Slowick's play calling. Enter C.J. Stroud leading him, correctly with passes to where some of these yak yards are simple broken arm tackles because he's already in motion, as opposed to Davis Mills hanging one up, and letting him get dried out there, leveled and whatnot. So the quarterback play definitely matters. That's why you saw him that third-year break. I think that we're going to see the same type of thing happen with Tank Dell in a full season this year. The mind meld is ridiculous between them two. They have like a Bluetooth connection on and off the field. They're best friends. They entered the league together. They hang around together. They're on group chats. They got that swag. They all got it all going. There's a big, huge connection thing going down, and I think other QBs around the league are starting to take note. I've seen that Jordan Love has handshakes with all his receivers now. Didn't have that all the years that he was a backup in Green Bay. So real recognize real. You got to emulate what's good. CJ Stroud's one of the best in the league, being drafted as such. Does he return on that? If you drafted him as a top 5 QB, I'm still scared, a little wary. I think that he'll live up to the hype, but does he return on the ADP? Still to be seen. I think that this offense, though, has the potential to be one of the best in the league. They were, I believe, hovering around top 13 in offense, if I'm not mistaken, last season. So they could still take strides, obviously, with that more solidified offensive line, a running game that is actually a running game. It's not Dameon Pierce for half a season, trying to figure it out. And then, Devin Singletary doing the most with the least. So hopefully this year they figure it out right out of the gate. We get the heavy dose of Joe Mixon kind of setting things up. And if they can set the pass up with the run, that's even better. We'll see some super efficiency from everybody all across the board as far as the pass catchers go in that group once the run game gets going. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen as far as, the season totals, but I'm even more excited just, to get some football in for us this weekend, going up against a division rival Colts, who I absolutely hate to see. I just can't stand them. I feel like every time we play them, even when we're supposed to beat the crap out of them, it's a super close game that goes down to the wire, and then there's some bad calls, and it usually happens. It goes down to the referees or something, or some random, mistake. But I would put the Texans at being a little sharper, cleaner team, better on paper. They should come out with a win. I don't have many score predictions, but I'm going to throw out a high-scoring affair. I think that all things considered, let's say Anthony Richardson stays in the whole game and he plays well. I think that the Texans are going to pull out a squeaker at the end of regulation or in overtime, 35-28. That is my prediction. A high-scoring affair, regardless of the Texans' great defense. Let's see. Got a lot of Stroud this year. Still room for growth. Yeah, definitely still room for growth. He missed two games last year with a concussion. He had several moments where he still did look like a rookie, right? Some growing pains, but only 5 interceptions, really took care of the ball. His issue was the sacks, right? But that necessarily doesn't always fall on him. He did a great job moving out and around the pocket, extending plays when the pocket was collapsing that turned into big plays. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for poor blocking. So I guess, chicken before the egg, some things, some causality there, right? But if you can just keep him upright in the pocket, then more power to him. He's probably going to be a lot better than having to throw on the run, even though he's phenomenal in that regards as well. Let's see. Oh, yes. Shout out to, Spencer says, my humble opinion debuts this Monday. So I got to get on some segment cuts for you. I got to get working with that. But I did get my internet fixed. We had some storms running through Texas recently. Had to restart the router, get all this stuff set up again. So it is what it is. Shout out, Rich Boy J. Do I really think the Colts can keep up with us in a high-scoring game? I don't trust AR to consistently pass like that. Yeah, so I'm saying if he stays healthy throughout and he's playing well, then I'm not saying he's going to keep up with the passing. I'm saying he'll probably keep up with the rushing. They're going to call a lot of RPOs. If we can't contain Jonathan Taylor gets going. Christian Harris is out of the middle linebacking situation there. We have Azeez Al-Shire, who's he should be really good, right? But we are missing another one of those key pieces in the linebacking core. So I think with a guy like Jake Hansen and Delshon Phillips filling in, it might be tough on the run game. We don't like to see, missed tackles or backups in, but if they can come in and play admirably, and we can really stop the run game and force AR to beat us with a pass, then yeah, we should stomp them out, and it wouldn't be a close game and a high-scoring affair. But I think that AR can and will be able to still do enough. I think they'll be able to get JT rolling a little bit, maybe 87 yards or so, but you'll probably get like another 50 from AR as well, just because the RPO is so hard to defend. Unless we have, that nightmare fuel in the backfield all day long, which I wouldn't mind, then, that could spell trouble for them, right? So if we have Hunter and Waj in the backfield all day, then it's going to be the Texans show, right? They're going to have AR slinging it out quick, not really reading, and then we'll have guys like Stingley and Petrie to clean it up in the back end. So we'll see. I would love for it to just be like, hey, the Texans come out and completely dominate, but I do also want to be realistic. We saw AR last year in his first game versus the Texans on 18 snaps, put up like 27 fantasy points versus us, 2 rushing touchdowns. So not good, Bob, not good. So like I said, if we can contain, obviously this defense I feel is a lot better, or was a lot better last year towards the end of the season than when they started, right? And they've gotten a lot better over the offseason. So I do think that they should be able to contain AR enough to where at some point in the game, they're going to be forcing him to throw the ball, and they can kind of just pin their ears back and kind of take over the game. And the Texans could pull away. But I still think that they will struggle. I know they jumped from one of the worst run defenses in the league last year to top 10-ish. If they can keep that up, then yeah, I don't see them having much trouble here. Because anybody outside of Michael Pittman doesn't necessarily scare me. And even that, with Derek Stingley locking him down, I mean, there's no much fear there. Like I said, my issue would be if AR starts finding some hot routes, the short, quick reads to JT out in the flat, or to his tight ends over the middle for quick chunk gains like 10-yarders, and he can keep the sticks moving and get in a rhythm, then that's what I don't like. And that worries me, like I said, with guys like Christian Harris, who's out of the lineup, who's probably our best cover linebacker, to be honest, if you want to put it in those terms. We saw his pick 6 last year versus Joe Flacco in the playoffs. So I do think that they can keep up, but in a high-scoring game, in the way you put it, probably not. I mean, 4 touchdowns for them, though. I mean, AR put 2 on the ground in a quarter and a half on us last year. So 4 touchdowns not out of the question, but maybe the Texans score way more than 35, right? They put up 46 versus the number 1 Browns defense in the number 1 defense in the NFL last year in the playoffs versus the Browns. They dropped a 40 burger on them. So, and that was without the likes of Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon and whatnot. So I think that yeah, this could turn into a blowout one way, but it's a divisional game, first game of the year, a lot of bugs to work out, a lot of guys playing together again, for the first time, conditioning, game speed, a lot of factors. So I do think that it will be a closer game than people would expect, even if it seems like the Texans are blowing them out. Last year, the Colts were blowing us out week 1, and it ended up finishing the game, I think, 31-20, and it really wasn't that close. I think it was like 31-10 at some point in that game. So they could still close the gap, but I would expect for us to really come out there, knock them in the mouth, even though we're on the road like we did last year in that game in the Loud House or the Stroud House, and just keep our foot on the gas. And we saw several times last year where when the Texans had a lead, they still kept throwing the ball. They still kept trying to put points on the board. So none of that, like, we're going to run out the clock type of mentality. Maybe because they couldn't, right? Our offense, as far as running the football, wasn't a powerhouse in that regard. So we'll see how it plays out this week, but I'm super excited. Got a decent amount of Nico and Tank too. Not much Diggs and Mixon. Yeah, the newcomers to the offense and being a little older statesman, I can totally understand that for fantasy. I'm loaded with Nico and Tank. Diggs, I don't think I have Diggs except for maybe in one of my 13, 14 leagues. And Mixon had been falling, so in areas where I kind of waited on running back and I wasn't able to grab either Nico or Tank, I definitely snagged up Mixon or Schultz way later just to have a piece of that 5-headed monster there in Houston. Rich Boy, appreciate your questions, man. Make sure you like and subscribe. We will be doing the H-Town Huddle every Wednesday, roughly around this time, going over fantasy stuff and the matchups. And we also do a whole bunch of other stuff on the GWN network. If you're not already liked and subscribed there, where we do Wake Your Game Up Tuesdays and Fridays. We have the Sunday Wake Up to Victory, where we're watching football all day long. Tomorrow we'll be doing Playmakers and a watch party of the Thursday night football game, so make sure you're coming back. How much better of a squad do you think we are this year compared to last? I think we're way better. First and foremost, experience, right? All our rookies were great in the draft class last year. All those guys are coming into their second year. I mentioned it, CJ, Tank, and then a plethora of the other guys who were kind of surrounding pieces getting into the mix. You also have guys like Mechie and Hutchinson coming into year 3, who have kind of taken a step up and are good depth pieces. Last year, they were just kind of ancillary, didn't really know if they could prove themselves, hard to step up when Tank went out or when Nico went out. That's why we had the likes of Noah Brown. And then he was released and cut because these guys have been playing a lot better. So our depth at receiver has gotten better. Cam Akers showing out in preseason has added some depth to the running back room behind Dameon Pierce, although in my opinion, I think he should be in front of Dameon Pierce for the way that he's played and looked, even though he's had 2 ruptured Achilles. I think he had 11 touches, 176 yards, and a touchdown or some shit. So that is just wild numbers I know it's preseason, but that's just really good production from a guy who's torn both his Achilles. He's only 25 years old, so plenty of time for him to recover and still be really good. We've seen it with former Texan Deonta Foreman still being in the league and being productive over there with the Panthers and now the Browns. So I think we've gotten better there. Offensive line, healthy, should be Juice Scruggs back. Patterson filled in well last year. Shaq Mason, some of these guys, if we can get them all playing together for an entire season, not having to shuffle these guys around a lot, I think that will be really good there as well. Defensive line, I know Danico Autry got suspended, but the addition of Danielle Hunter and Defensive Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson, I mean, I think the team has just gotten better all the way around. Even their 2 draft picks this year in Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter are now projected to be starters at the safety and corner position. We haven't seen much from them because they've been getting the starter treatment. You know, we didn't see them much in preseason, just kind of joint practices and in practice. I trust Coach D'Amico enough to where he knows what to do and who to put in these situations. If these rookies are good enough, you know, and they have more talent than Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson and all these other dudes that we have out there, then put them out on the field. And who cares if they're rookies? We saw it last year with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell. Like, don't hold back. If these guys can play ball, let them play ball, let them cook. So I'm feeling the addition of Aziz as well in the middle linebacker. We let go of some other guys who were just guys, in my opinion, like Blake Cashman. I don't think that he's going to go out and have another stellar season in Minnesota like he did here under D'Amico Ryans in Houston. So I just think that the way that the team is coached, the guys that they've gotten in there as far as filling in depth pieces, the way that the organization is now run from top to bottom. I mean, Cal McNair went from being laughingstock Tommy Boy to like the savior of the rebrand, and like we all love him and shit. So Hannah McNair as well, like she's a queen, man. She's awesome. I just love to hear her talk shit to the other teams and stuff. So she really puts Amy Adams and the Titans under her thumb with some of the shit she says. So it's just good stuff. The Texans have the swagger. It's back. The city's different. We got the rebrand. You know, I think that that's just a better squad from top to bottom. The fan base is going to be showing out. It's just a whole new vibe in Houston. And it will suck, though, if they don't live up to the hype, right? So for me, my expectations are still, I think, reasonable. I think at worst, they're an 8 to 9 win team. I think at best, they're a 12-win team with a really tough schedule, right? So if everything falls in place, I think that they can get to 12 wins, possibly be vying for a first-round bye type of thing, but it's going to be tough with the other 2 teams that I think that are just as good in the AFC, and that's the Ravens and Chiefs who play tomorrow night. So Texans have historically had problems with both of those squads, so it's just getting over that hill. And I think that they have done enough on paper as far as bringing in the right personnel to get them there. Now it's just about getting out there, executing, and persevering, right? So hopefully, you know, D'Amico has his squad ready. Slowick has, you know, he's in his bag, and everybody else kind of falls in line and buys in. And I think that the Texans will be just fine. I think that they've incrementally increased, and we've seen it with the media. People are paying attention all of a sudden. We're getting that Lions type treatment now where people are mentioning Super Bowl in the same breath, which is like, whoa, pump the brakes. Don't get ahead of yourself. But especially for me, I don't like to jinx stuff like that. But if other people can notice it, and then you have to, as a fan, kind of appreciate that and just kind of take it in, because who knows when we'll be in this kind of situation again. It's been 22 years the Texans have been in existence, the youngest team ever, expansion team here in the NFL, and now finally on the cusp of being a competitor and being mentioned in the same breaths as, you know, the top teams in the league. So and even being considered on the other side of this, the conference, the NFC, like being better than most of those as well, as far as rankings and preseason polls and all that stuff go. But I think that we've made leaps and bounds as far as personnel, just everything top to bottom as far as things go there in Houston. So I'm really excited. I think last year I came into the season, like I said, expecting maybe 7 or 8 wins. They surpassed that. This year, like I said, I'm going in with that 10 to 12 type range. And if they can surpass that again and really take that leap, then there's the sky's the limit, right? But if they finish right in that range, regardless, and they're competing for a division title again, then the consistency's there. And this should be the formula and what we expect to see from the Texans for several years to come, or as long as CJ Stroud is the quarterback under center in the H. So that was a long-winded answer. Really sorry, but I'm glad you asked the question. Really pumped about the season. Like I said, I tried to keep this show at about an hour. Been going about an hour and 42, but I just wanted to make sure that I went over everything that we could. Anthony Richardson, just some more stats just to bring it in. He was at 5.4 yards per carry, and he did have 4 touchdowns in those 4 appearances, and it wasn't a full 4 games either. So that's the only thing that does worry me. He is a runner, right? So if we can nip that in the bud, then we'd be fine. Jonathan Taylor, of course, 741 yards in the 10 games that he appeared. He was off injured as well, so we didn't see him. It was mostly Zach Moss in that second half of the year when we caught them right before the playoff game. So new revamped run game for the Colts. Like I said, this is the worry. We got to stop the run first, assert our dominance on defense, and if we can do that, then I'm not too worried at all about the Texans losing this game. Sorry about that. Let's get back to the comments. Really appreciate the thoughtful answers. Talent-wise, is there any defense in the league that should be able to keep up with our offense? Well, yeah, obviously, the Ravens trounced us twice last year, and it was a 10-10 ball game going into halftime, and our only touchdown came on a punt return from Steve Sims. So our offense was not cooking at all, and I don't believe that we put up any second half points in that game. So Ravens is definitely at the top of my list on that one. I know they lost some pieces on their defense, so we'll get to see that tomorrow when they play the Chiefs, right? That's another big-time offense. We'll see how the Ravens fare. And at the same time, I think the Chiefs' defense in the AFC is also one that should be, to be reckoned with. They did a great job last year. That's why we didn't see high scoring from the Chiefs last year. They were just kind of getting by on their defense, kicking ass. So those two defenses are the ones that I think are the huge tests for the Texans. They face both of these teams after the bye this year. I think right after the bye, it's Miami, and then the Chiefs, and then Christmas Day, it's the Ravens. So we'll have the whole length of the season to try to figure that stuff out and get there. But yeah, those defenses would probably be the ones that I would be looking at to give us some trouble this season. And the Jets as well. The Jets have a rockin' defense. So shout out to Kidda, our man Kidda out there, who knows all about the Jets, is our Jets savant, I guess you would say. But yeah, their defense is really good. CJ Stroud struggled with them in the rain last year on the road. That was the game that he got knocked out with a concussion. So he wasn't doing well before the concussion. He got knocked out early, right? And that really hurt his season averages and is hurt for his MVP race when that happened in that game. So I remember watching it right here in this room. It was really, really sad. I was like, no, he hit his head. So we were able to scrape by. We pulled off a win with a backup quarterback the following week versus the Titans and kept us alive. So it is how it is. Woods was our wide receiver 2 in that Ravens game. Yeah, I know. I'd love to see how they fare against us now. No, most definitely. And that's what I mentioned. The Texans just seemed outclassed as far as personnel. It wasn't necessarily like, I guess it was the amount of talent on the field. The talent that they did have and the players they did have was well enough for them to get by up to that point. But you could see the talent differential with a top tier team like the Ravens or like the Chiefs, who were stacked, all the way around. So now this year, like I mentioned previously, I think that the depth has gotten much better, that those guys that are our twos were once our starters 2 years ago, like Davis Mills and all those other guys who were holding it down all those years before the influx of free agents and new picks, right? So yeah, Woods was the wide receiver 2. He had kind of pedestrian numbers. I don't have them up here. I didn't see. It wasn't even important enough for me to make a graphic for, but he was around, especially early on, and the team decided to keep him, I guess, either for his blocking or his wide receiver presence. I don't necessarily know how he fits into this offense per se. He's not like flashy. He's not a field stretcher anymore. I think it's just that wide receiver presence in the room. I don't know why you would keep him, though, when you already have a guy like Diggs. Noah Brown was off injured, so I could see why they let him go. And then maybe the other guys just weren't good enough to keep on the team. Ben Skoranek, the Janky twins. some of the other receivers that they had there. So I do like the group that they kept. You got like Steve Sims, who's a speedy guy. Like I said, I'm not too sure why Woods is still there. It's really surprised to me that he actually still made the team. But I do love Bobby Trees, and it's good for the morale. And he seems to like, even though he doesn't like flash great production, he seems to be a great blocker, be in good situations, know what to do, maybe open up a rub route for somebody else to get open. So maybe a lot of things that we don't see that the coaching staff does, and that's the reason why he's there. But he's not going to be on the field much. My guess is you'll see in the 3 wide receiver sets, the main 3 guys, Diggs, Tank, and Nico. And then in the wide receiver 4 slot, rotating in occasionally, you might get a Mechie or a Hutchinson. I don't really see how Woods fits in unless it's an obvious like run down or whatever, and he's going to get motioned in and block on the edge of the line of scrimmage or something like that, or crack back a linebacker. But I do value his blocking and his veteran presence. But it was a surprise to me that he was still on the team. But yeah, I do want to see how teams fare against us with seems like a plethora of wide receivers now. We have that problem of overabundance to where guys like Noah Brown went and signed with the Washington Commanders. So is the 2023 draft class already our best ever? Yes. Yeah. By far and away, just with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell in that one draft class, just for the offensive purpose. And then if you want to add Will Anderson Jr., the defensive rookie of the year on the other side, what a great, 2-3 pick for the Texans in the draft last year. I was besides myself. When they took CJ Stroud, I was ecstatic. I was happy. I threw stuff in the air. I was running around my kitchen. 2 of my buddies who were Cowboys fans were here, and they're like, "You're trading up again." And I was like, "What's going on?" And at that point, I lost it, didn't know what was happening. And then when we took Will Anderson, I just couldn't believe it. So I think just before that draft, I said, watch the Texans fuck around and take both of these guys, because they were projected with about the same amount of odds. The Texans could go either way in drafting either Stroud or Will Anderson, and they ended up taking them both. So that in itself right there is a huge gamble and win for the Texans, because with those 2 picks, they got the offense and defensive rookie of the year. And just kind of swindled the draft, in my opinion. That is just really good job by Caserio doing his stuff there. And then his draft picks from a couple of seasons are now starting to pay off with the likes of Stingley and Mech and the like. So I really think that he's done a great job. He obviously hasn't hit on all of them. Kenyon Green is still a work in progress. We're trying to see how he fares at the guard position for the Texans offensive line. He looked horrible after being a draft pick, and then not playing well, and then getting injured, and then not playing well, and then getting injured. And now he's lost some weight. He looked good in the preseason. He's not injured, and his PFF pass blocking grades and run blocking grades have more than tripled since his previous scores in the other 2 seasons. So that might be another pick that's starting to pay off. We will see. Hopefully it does. That'd be great news for CJ Stroud and the rest of the offensive line. They also drafted a young offensive linemen who can play swing tackle on both sides in case Howard or Tunsil go out. So Caserio's just been doing a great job. I hope we don't lose that guy ever. I hope he just retires and stays with the Texans, or at least stays in Houston as long as he did for New England to see all those Super Bowl runs. So it'd be nice to get at least one of those in the H. Yeah, that Stingley pick is looking elite right now. And I did mention it earlier off the top of the podcast how Sauce Gardner is, considered one of the most elite cornerbacks and dangerous, and he's number 1 in the NFL and all that stuff. And a lot of people have him that way on his list. But as far as coverage goes and pure coverage, I think that I would have Derek Stingley at the tippy top of my list, just because of the way that he closes in on receivers when it looks like they're open. He baits quarterbacks into making bad throws, and then he's always at the right place at the right time. The knock on him has he been healthy, or when he's healthy, can he stay healthy? Well, when he's been healthy, he's been a top 3 corner in the league easily. So that pick is really starting to hit right now. It looks great. He's about to get paid. He just signed with David Muglietta, or Mulagetta. There you go. David Mulagetta, as Bogard would say, the Mulagetta. So he's just signed with that agent who's represented guys like CJ Stroud and Deshaun Watson. So he's about to get paid this next coming off season. I do think that he will get paid before Sauce, and then Sauce will, try to be the highest paid after that, which is totally fine. Totally fine with me. I'm cool with that. Just like how the Texans went ahead and paid Nico Collins first, and then all these other receivers are going out and getting ridiculous ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, Brandon Ayuk has relatively the same stats as Nico Collins did last year, I guess, in like retrospect to where they finished in fantasy points. And I guess that's probably like where the difference is, right? You know, and Ayuk you can use on end arounds, and he's kind of a little more versatile than Nico in that sense. But I wouldn't be paying him 140 mil where I'm paying Nico 75 mil. You know, so the disparity in the contract price is crazy, and that's what happens when you get out up in front and you pay your studs on time and you don't take it down to the wire and try to play chicken with these guys. You're gonna have to pay them eventually, either that or they're gonna get, you know, go somewhere else. So why not pay them now, keep them on your team, and make everybody happy? The Mulageta, you do say that, the Mulageta. Strategically, it makes sense to try to get Stingley signed before Sauce. Yes, yeah, and that's what I would do. And I think that Casario's a smart guy. He was in finance. He was an accountant by trade before he became a GM, right? So he knows about finances. He kind of looks at the numbers, says, okay, this is what we can do. Let's see if we can put these in place now and lock them up. That way in the future, the numbers don't grow. We don't kick this can down the road too far. So I do love that savviness about our man Nick Caserio there. And then I love him in press conferences. He's a real football guy. He was a quarterback in college at some point, if I'm not mistaken. And he's out there in the field, literally down there with the players, looking at the personnel, talking with the coaches, seeing how guys fit, talking about the numbers. He's super involved. He's in there with the ownership. So this is something that I don't think I had ever seen in this kind of facet with the Houston Texans ever before. And I know that they had Rick Smith and everybody loved and hated him as the GM for several years. And I was on the side where I really liked him, and then they got rid of him, and then they went the whole Bill O'Brien thing, and that was just a whole disaster. So I'm just glad that all of that stuff got taken care of, and they finally got their guy, Nick Caserio, and he's just wrecking, man. Kudos to him. He's very savvy. He's a really good GM. The Texans got their guy, and like I said, they hired him first. He put in a couple of placeholders until he got the coach that they wanted, and they brought in the perfect coach in D'Amico Ryans, former linebacker, former, I believe, defensive rookie of the year for the Texans as well. So this guy really, you know, he really helped to change and mold the culture as well as for what's going on in Houston. I've never felt more a part of or been in sync with the culture, what the team is doing, than I have at this point in 2024. And I've been a fan since the team's inception back in the day when David Carr beat the Dallas Cowboys in their first game. So, yeah, I mean, I'll buy a puffy vest and I'll wear it if we win a Super Bowl. Cause I mean, Nick Caserio is just doing wonders. Really, really like what he's done since he's gotten here. And there was people out there who were calling for his head after the first 2 years. It's like, rebuilds don't happen overnight. And probably one of the fastest rebuilds in NFL history just happened. And he did it in 2 years. He had 2 down years since he got there. And I'm including the first year. So he gets here, that's down year 1, another down year, and then boom, last year they flipped the script. So wowzers. Kudos to that man. Let's go ahead and try wrapping this up. Let's see if I got any other points. Danielle Hunter last year, 16.5 sacks. Golly, that was going to feel so good and help Will Anderson. I think Tino called it, or somebody the other day said that Will Anderson is going to have double-digit sacks. I'm down with that, especially with Danielle Hunter causing havoc on the other end. You can't double team these guys. They're going to be trouble. The defensive rookie of the year last year, we talked about that. Stingley and Pitt, I kind of talked about that. Derek Stingley shutting down Pittman. I don't see him having a huge game, if at all. I think probably the best game would be maybe like a less than a handful of catches for 80 yards would be considered a great game for Pittman versus Stingley. So I'm not even expecting that. Temper your expectations if you're starting Pittman versus Stingley. I just talked him up. Now, there are chances that he could get taken for a ride, or Pittman. So Stingley doesn't travel, just in case you all know. So don't completely sit Michael Pittman. Stingley only plays on one side of the field. He will not travel very often and shadow anybody. And this goes back to last year, and I think they're perfectly fine with Kamari Lassiter on the other side. Yet to be seen. I haven't seen much on him other than his minimal highlight film from college and some preseason snaps in the where they didn't target him, and then some joint practice reps where he played fairly well against guys like Cooper Kupp and things like that. So, and some of our own guys dig. So I've seen him go up against ones from other teams, I guess, on some film, and perform at. There's no indication of him getting burned for touchdowns or anything like that happened in this offseason. And the Texans, I guess, are confident enough to have him starting across from Derek Stingley on the other side. So, like I said, though, Pittman will probably try to move him around the field and get their playmakers the ball. So I don't anticipate Stingley shadowing him. So he may have a decent game. We'll at the end of Sunday, we'll figure out how many of his receptions came against Stingley or not. There was this little side note that I had about Josh Downs having 771 yards. He was emerging Downs, as I called it. So still questionable, I believe, for this game. I don't think that he's going to be in the lineup. I have to check on that. I don't have much Downs as far as fantasy goes, and I didn't check the initial injury report for the Colts, but I don't expect Downs to be playing. And I did talk about Azeez Al-Shaair coming in. So I do like the fact that he was a workhorse out there in Tennessee. He was in San Francisco's defense along with Coach Ryans, and he is now the guy out here for Houston. I believe that he'll have a very similar year, probably upwards of 163 tackles, in my opinion. But also at the same time, if he's racking up that many, then our defense is probably out there a lot. So maybe not. It just depends, right? But I do like Azeez this year. It's going to be the key matchup to watch, him versus Jonathan Taylor, seeing he can stop that run game, get the Texans set up, and then get them set up for to get back out on offense quickly, but at the same time keep the Colts at long down and distance, second and third and longs, make things difficult for Anthony Richardson, because he doesn't seem like the type of guy who's necessarily looking at the defense, going through progressions and making reads. He's probably like more of a 1-2, pull the ball down and go, or RPO and throw. So it's going to be interesting to see that if we can have Al-Shaair kind of shut down Taylor, be in a stopgap or blowing things up in the backfield along with the other two guys on the defensive end. If we can really shut down that run game, I don't see the Texans having any sorts of problems. But JT is still there, 741 yards in 10 games like we talked about, and Ant-Man can run at 5.4 yards a clip and the 4 TDs in just 4 games. So we are scared about some of that. On the other side of the football, though, Joe Mixon did have those 1,410 scrimmage yards. Do love Sir Mix a lot. Damn, where'd he go?
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Yeah, so I expect Mixon to have a decent game. If the Texans start to pull away, we'll start to see a little bit more of him, hopefully. But otherwise, like I said, I don't expect the Texans to take their foot off of the gas pedal. I think that they'll just keep throwing it and doing what they do best versus a Colts team whose weakness seems to be versus the pass. So it is what it is there. Let me see here. Do you think in week 1, Mitchell is a great DFS play because he's going to be against a young corner opposite Stingley? Scratch that. Is Mitchell going to be their primary slot? Yeah, I think that he's going to actually – Mitchell's going to be trading with Pierce for that role. So we'll see. I don't know if he's pulled away from Pierce in his last couple of weeks to actually earn that slot role, but he looked like he was playing it more in the preseason game versus the Bengals than Alec Pierce was, as far as where the slot goes, right? They may still use Pierce on the outside and bring him in. And I know that with Downs being either out or limited or, whatever, dealing with an injury, we'll probably see some more AD in that slot. Yeah, see, Downs is out or at least trending towards it. That's why I was asking about Mitchell. Yeah, so I do think that we'll see, like I said, we'll probably see more AD Mitchell in that spot because if anything, Pierce would probably play on the outside over there. From what I've seen from the Colts and that a little bit of that preseason game that I did watch earlier this year. He likes touchdowns and he can't lie. Yeah, he's talking about Sir Mix a lot there. So good stuff. I think I talked about just about everything. There was the linebacker battle. I pulled up just about everything I wanted to as far as how things were going, as far as matchups to look at, the over-under. Talked about AR. Talked about Diggs fitting in, becoming. Also, I didn't talk about this much, but word is, nothing but a team guy, team player, team leader. No diva yet. And also, if you want to go back and look at history, I think it took about 4 years in Minnesota and 4 years in Buffalo before we got any diva talk out of Stephon Diggs, which is fine. You want to go look at some of his interviews that he's done lately. A lot of these have been popping up this week with Diggs and Tank Dell making their rounds in the podcast world. Tank talks about, hey, just get open. Everybody's going to eat. Seven's going to feed you. He's going to hit the guy who's open. Tank also talked about how he and Diggs are kind of the same. He's like, hey man, we're out here working. You know, Mixon's going to get his because he's a running back. He's going to get that ball. They're going to feed him. But all the other receivers are going to have to work to get open, and they're going to just, you know, work hard every single play. And whoever's open or who's more open is going to, you know, get the ball first or get those first looks. So all these guys kind of competing with each other, but still being brothers. And the fact that, and I love this quote that Tank mentioned in that interview. He said, if your brother's getting blessed, then there's blessings in the neighborhood. So, I mean, if Tank goes 7 for 136 and a touchdown and the other guys don't do as well, I'm pretty sure they're still going to be happy if the Texans get a win, right? So that's the indication there. Nothing but brotherly love. We talked about the fact that Tank is attached to Stephon Diggs at the hip, asking him questions, learning everything that he can from the guy, and that they are really similar as far as personality styles and stuff like that. They want the ball too. Tank wants the ball also. And Diggs has said, like, hey, man, if you're a receiver and you're not asking for the ball, you don't think that you're open all the time or whatever, then you're not doing your job right. So in this situation, I think that everything's going to be fine. Diggs is coming into a coaching situation and a team situation where he's not the de facto, like, I'm the sole captain of this team, like I'm the best. I mean, it was him and Josh Allen and the other in Buffalo, and it was like him in Minnesota, you know. So I think here there's more, like we mentioned, there's maybe more mouths to feed, but there's also more leaders, a lot more guys out there putting it down and putting the main goal up, you know, in front for everybody to see, and everybody working and trying to achieve that goal. So I don't think that, you know, with a couple of down games, he's going to get pouty, especially if the Texans are still winning. I know that last year the Bills went away from Diggs, and then his numbers kind of declined and they started winning, but there was an offensive coordinator change. The weather gets cold in Minnesota and in Buffalo, so drops are going to come, targets are going to be harder to come by. And then I looked at some of those targets, and some of them were not really catchable. Josh Allen isn't the most accurate quarterback alive. So, and then before that, I think he had Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins for a while, and this was several years ago. So both times that Stephon left those situations, I think it was on his own accord. I think both times, shout out to our ear to the streets, Lee, he mentioned that Stephon Diggs was the one who wanted to leave and that the team still wanted to retain him. So it's not like the Bills said, hey, Diggs, get out of here, we don't want you. I'm pretty sure they tried to retain him, and he was just kind of like, nah, you know, I'm ready to move on and go somewhere else or do something else and see where that takes me. So I do believe that CJ Stroud is the best quarterback that Stephon Diggs will have ever played with in his entire career in the NFL. And I also believe that that they're just going to have a different connection. I mean, Kirk O'Chains is cool and all, but we know that he's listening to like Paramore and Panic at the Disco at practices. And CJ's, you know, the Texans vibe is completely different, right? So Josh Allen, I don't know what he listens to, but he is the white Michael Vick. So CJ Stroud just has more swagger, probably communicate with his receivers and the team just a little bit better, pull everybody in, man. Like, you know, not knocking Josh Allen, but like I said, he wasn't the most accurate guy. Take off running a lot, missing his dudes. So. You know, if a couple of reads or whatever, a lot of times I think that Stephon Diggs wasn't even the primary read, or if he was, you know, Josh Allen was coming off of him real quick. A lot of his targets were on broken plays when he's scrambling around. And he's like, oh, there's Diggs. Now I'll throw it to him. So I think that we'll be able to keep Diggs a little happier in Houston. And I think Bobby Sloak's a great coordinator to where he'll be able to scheme things up for guys, even when they're having a bad game, just to give them some touches. That way they can stay appeased, but at the same time, it's not going to hurt the offense, right? You got to get your playmakers going. So if for some reason Stephon Diggs isn't going, trust me, they'll try to get him going. If Nico Collins isn't getting going, they'll try to get him going. If Tank Dell hasn't had any targets, they'll try to get him. Slowick's going to do that. He's going to try to spread the ball around. They don't want to be one-dimensional. They want you to think about a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm not too worried about it, and I'm not worried at all about what Stephon Diggs brings to the table as far as messing up vibes with Houston. I think the vibes are immaculate. I think he's fitting in right where he wants to with them, and this is going to be a smooth transition, at least for these 2 years that he's under contract. Let's see. Rich boy, man. Appreciate you, man. Diggs has by far looked like our best receiver in the preseason. People thought he fell off, but he's really about to ball the fuck out this year. Yeah, I don't think he's fallen off. I mentioned it before. throughout his entire career, Diggs has always started off really well and then kind of dropped off towards the end. And like I said, it might be something to do with the weather in Minnesota or Buffalo. Could be something to do with the quarterback play. Could be something to do with the offensive scheming and play calling, coordinator change. Who knows what it is? But if you look back over his, I think, 9-year history in the NFL, he typically starts off really, really, really strong, and then it starts to fade a little bit. Last year was the most drastic, and I think that's why everybody's kind of throwing it out there and bringing it up, and he's lost a step and blah, blah, blah. He's done it every year. It's just last year was super drastic as far as being super hot at the beginning and then super cold at the end. So it was a bad way to leave Buffalo, I think, being hot and cold like that and just making it real polarizing for people. But at the same time, I know the Texans were in the hunt for guys like Keenan Allen. There were some other names that were being thrown around, T. Higgins, but he wasn't, never really shopped by Cincy. So those were like the two guys up there. And then when Stephon Diggs was like available, I was like, there's no way they're going to get Stephon Diggs. And then it happened. So I was really ecstatic when that happened. I mean, he just kind of fell into our lap. People probably didn't want him because of the diva, aura that he had or whatever it is. But you can't take a couple of clips from the sideline when you're losing a playoff game and then extrapolate it like he's always pissed off at Josh Allen. I mean, it happens. People are going to be pissed off. They get into it on the sidelines here and there, but he's obviously an animated guy. He's very passionate about things, and that's just the way he is. And sometimes you need that fire in a team. You see some of these Texans guys, and some of them are a little more stoic or quiet, don't really lead through words. So, it's nice to have a guy in the locker room who's vocal and can get people riled up. That's why they put the C on his chest already. He's a captain here, and he's going to be a captain on the field for the season and possibly for, another season or more, depending on how this year goes with the Houston Texans. Let's see. Corky Kirk Cousins is in the club with hella chains, and he cannot find the beat in that 2-step. Yeah, it's more like a 3-step. Yeah, that's what it is. He puts on the chains. He tries to and I commend Kirk for that, but I don't know how genuine it is. I've seen Kirk. He's more of a square, goes to church all the time, gives me Mormon vibes or whatever. But at least he does have some fun, and he's not like a complete square out there. But, that vibe, like him and Diggs, like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like a vibe that, I don't know, it just seems weird. Same thing with him and Josh Allen. Josh Allen also seems kind of like, he's going to be out there farming or doing stuff. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just me being stereotypical with some of these guys, but like, I don't see where they're hanging out off the field, getting closer, talking about football, doing stuff like that, as opposed to where he and CJ could possibly be going to like a fashion show or something, right? In that regards, or a Rockets game or whatever. Like, I don't know what games they were going out to in Buffalo on the side, Knicks games and stuff like that. But I just don't feel like it's the same kind of deal. Maybe not a lot of things to do in Buffalo. I don't know, but Diggs is still getting lost in Houston, so I'm pretty sure he's just sticking by the team, getting the work done. But I think that brings us to an end here, guys. We've got about 2 hours on the show here. Talked a lot of Houston Texans, gave you a lot of my thoughts, gave you some numbers leading up into this matchup for the Texans at the Colts. Here's a fun fact. The Colts have not won a season opener in the last 10 years. So even more reason to try to stay aligned with history, put my money on the Texans for Sunday, and have them come out of there with a W. So I'm expecting good things from my guys. Hopefully nobody gets injured on either side. That includes AR. I know it would be great for all my takes, but I would never wish injury upon anyone like that. And I would rather him just suck as a passer and bust that way. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully he does try to air it out and they try to test our Texans and that secondary. I think Sting is going to have a good game if they do go his way. I guarantee you he's going to have at least one pick. Look for Jalen Petrie to make some noise in the box against this run-heavy Colts D. So if you got a Jalen Petrie in your IDP leagues, start him, fire him up, put him in there for sure. I think he's going to make a lot of noise. Oh, and we got the bogey in the house.
I got a haircut, so I just wanted to show up.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't see you. Your screen's blank.
Oh no! Oh, I didn't allow the camera. Well, you know what? I tell you, I look phenomenal.
I agree. I bet.
Yeah, okay.
You got the cleanup.
Say, man, great show.
Awesome.
Great.
Hey,
Yeah.
appreciate everybody who was in the chat. Appreciate you guys. Rich Boy J, man, appreciate you bringing all that stuff up. If you are a Texans fan, please like and subscribe. Follow all my stuff. We do all the isms here. I bring a lot of Texans content to the rest of our shows.
I'll let you close the great show.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So we bring a lot of great content to the rest of our shows out there, especially with all the Texans isms. And I'm going to be giving you guys, is so-and-so a good start this week? Just like some of those questions you had. I think this is a great week one to go ahead and just fire up all 5 of your Texans 5-headed monsters. Maybe not Schultz so much, but I still have confidence there if he's the only guy you're rocking with. But Mixon, fire him up. Dell, fire him up. Nico, fire him up. Tank, definitely fire him up. He is my number 1 option at flex this week. So if you don't have a better flex option, or you're debating Tank or, I don't know, whoever it is, Garrett Wilson or somebody like that, I still think that he's going to have a phenomenal week as opposed to some of these like a Calvin Ridley or dudes that are the de facto number 1 on bad offenses. I didn't mean to say Garrett Wilson. I think he's probably going to have a good week. But you know what I'm saying? Like if you're debating something close like that, then I'm leaning Tank. He's my for sure fire starter, put him in your flex guy. But those other guys are auto starts for me as well. CJ Stroud, if you drafted him, you're playing him. Same thing with AR, man. If you drafted AR and you don't have a reasonable backup, then you're playing AR this week against the Texans and not watching and hoping for the best probably. That being said, you're starting JT on that side. You're starting Pittman. And that's probably about it as far as it goes on the Colts side. I'm expecting the Texans defense to step up and play well, even in a week one. What they showed me versus Daniel Jones and the Giants in that preseason warm-up game was a thing of beauty. So I'm expecting stuff like that to be the staple for this defense for the entire season. But on that note, fellas and ladies and all the other gentlemen, my score prediction was the Texans 35-28. We'll see how that plays out, if I'm close or if it's just a pure blowout either way. I don't anticipate it being a blowout for the Colts over the Texans unless there's like a major injury. But like I already said, barring any of that stuff, the Texans should take care of business. Appreciate everybody showing out week 1. We'll be back week 2 next Wednesday, same time, same channel. We'll be recapping the fantasy performances and the performances from the Texans-Colts game, giving you all the breakdowns, maybe some highlights. And then we'll preview week 2 and move on in the same fashion. So appreciate everybody once again. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we will catch you on the next one. Peace.